17, 48.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're live.
Meeting called to order at 7 p.m. on September 25th. Notice to the student body, all students are members and participants in student government, and as such are encouraged to take part in discussion of Senate bills and orders or issues affecting students. Please wait to be recognized by the chair and be courteous to others wishing to speak. Now we'll move into roll call. Senator Advet. Olacart. Bender. Blair. Khan. Culbertson. Dowlinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Lifford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonette. Zastra. Now we'll move into Pledge of Allegiance led by Speaker Culbertson. Moving on to programs. For programs for tonight, we have student health and wellness. Y'all want to take the floor away?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Erin Baldwin. I use pronouns she, her, hers. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Student Health and Wellness and the Director of the Thielen Student Health Center, and I will let my two colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Nice to meet everybody. My name is Dr. Chris Haynes. I'm the Director of Student Counseling Services, he, him, his, and I'm also a licensed psychologist, and it's great to be here to get to talk to all of you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Vanderheiden. I'm the Assistant Director in Student Wellness. I use pronouns he, him, and his.
Thanks for having us this evening. We're here to give you a little update about our Student Health and Wellness Department, so we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. So just briefly, the Student Health and Wellness Unit is made up of 4 separate departments. So that includes Recreation Services, Student Wellness, Student Counseling Services, and the Thielen Student Health Center. And really just to give you an idea of our goals as 4 departments coming together, we're really focused on creating a campus culture of holistic wellness for all of you as students. So really focusing on all the dimensions of wellness, and really we want you to feel that there's no wrong door for you. If you come to any of our departments, we'll help you get to the right resources that you need to be holistically well. We provided you with some documents in front of you. So first of all, you have our health and wellness guide. This is a really detailed guide that includes information about all 4 of our departments that you can check out. All of this can also be found on our unit landing page, which is cyclonehealth.org. We also provided you the document on the screen that I'll talk about in a minute, and then also our annual report from 2019 that talks about some of the things that we've been doing over the past year. So I hope you'll check that out when you have a minute. One of the things that we want to do for all of you as students is understand what services are available for you and tell our story about how we're providing those services. So this is our 2019 impact statement that's up on the screen and that you have in front of you. We wanted to give you a snapshot of the services that all the departments have and then how we're impacting you as students. So at the top, you can look at our unit impact. We have presentations that we do from all 4 departments that our peer wellness educators, which are our students, and our student health ambassadors help us provide. Last year we did over 300 presentations, reached over 12,000 students, and then collectively, across all 4 of our departments, we served over 85% of the student body last year. So we're really excited about that. That's the first time we've measured it, but we want to continue to see that percentage go higher. Then you have a little breakdown of each of the 4 departments. So on the left, Recreation Services, you can look at the 4 service areas that really are encompassed there. And then you have the impact numbers. So it's always fascinating for me to look at these type of things. Over 1 million facility visits to recreation services last year. Then at student wellness is really our arm focused on health promotion, health prevention. Brian will talk about our services there, and you can see our impact. Chris is going to share some about counseling, student counseling services. We have a lot of different services there that support mental health and well-being. You can look at their total impact. And then the Thielen Student Health Center, I'll share a little bit about that, all of the services we have and the impact we have for students. So just briefly, wanted to, some of this, for some of you, this will be new information. Back in 2016, student government at that time put together a mental health task force, and they really wanted to look at mental health resources across campus, and they made some recommendations to university leadership at that time. One of the recommendations made from student government was, let's look at what it would look like to have a combined health and wellness building. So we've been working on that since student government provided us that feedback. Just a brief update, as enrollment has grown, the space at the health center and student counseling has been exhausted. If you know where student wellness is, they're in a very small area of Friley, next to Friley Windows. So we really wanted to look at how we could better serve all of you as students. So we did a feasibility study. We looked at some project goals. Specifically, we wanted to design a space that would accommodate additional mental health and primary care providers and co-locate all of those providers to really eliminate any stigma for accessing health and wellness services, specifically mental health services. So this project has continued to progress over the last couple of years. Currently, it's under review by university leadership, but I know as our student government body changes, we just wanted to give you a brief update of where that's at. So next, none of this will be surprising information to you as students. We participate in a national survey every 2 years called the National College Health Assessment, and it looks at health and wellness trends for you all as students. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is that student health and well-being are really inextricably linked to you being successful academically, being retained here at Iowa State, and then persisting through graduation. So we really look at that data closely. I wanted to share one data piece specifically. So these are factors that students identify affect their academic performance. You probably won't be surprised to see any of these top 10. So stress, anxiety, sleep, depression, and you can see the rest of the list. But we really use this data to inform the services that we provide to all of you and where we spend our time and resources. So wanted to share that data point and information with all of you. Next, we'll just briefly talk about department updates. So from the Student Health Center perspective, last year we had the highest number of visits in health center history with close to 50,000 visits between primary care, mental health, our nurse visits, and physical therapy. If you've come to the health center, you probably know you receive a survey afterwards asking you about your experience. Last year, on over 3,000 surveys, we had a 4.6 out of 5 rating, which 5 being strongly agree with the services that they were well provided at the health center. So we're proud of that, but always continuing to work on making that better. Mobile flu clinics are going to be coming up. Last year, we did over 3,000 flu shots. I'd encourage you to come get your flu shot right now. It's already out in the community. There's lots of positive flu going around, so come get your flu shot. This last year, too, we also brought PrEP therapy on site, so that's pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV. So that's now available for students on site at the health center. And we are actively working to expand our transgender care for our students. Then briefly, I'll talk about our colleague, Michael Giles. He's the Director of Recreation Services. He couldn't be here this evening, but wanted to share just briefly the new branding that we hope you've seen if you've been to the Recreation Services facilities. So Mike and the Rec Services team is really trying to promote that we want recreation services to be really accessible for everyone. So we're going through Your Rec, Your Way campaign. You've probably also seen the Southeast Field Complex, which is across the street from Jack Trice Stadium. That field is under renovation to add more field space, to add lighting for safety, so you'll be able to participate in recreation activities longer into the evening as well. And then a project that we're really excited about is esports. So this will be an area in Bayer that will open in 2020, focused around gaming, and really trying to look at gaming and make it a positive thing that can bring students together to focus on community and activities that may be a little different than rec services traditionally are thought of.
Esports got a reaction there. That was nice. I happen to be looking around the room. So it's great to be here. So I'm talking about student counseling services. And I've met with a lot of you or as groups, actually, to talk a little bit about this. And really, as Erin and Brian and myself and Student Health and Wellness are trying to do is just tell our story. So a little bit about SCS specifically. Last year, we kind of defined our scope more explicitly in a scope of services statement. And I just wanted to kind of give some reminders around that. So at SCS, we provide brief counseling services, and that usually takes about 4 to 8 session framework. So there's not a session limit, but it's a framework. Nationally, the average number of sessions attended is 4.5. At Iowa State, it's 4.8. So what that does is that allows us to better kind of communicate what types of services we have and our framework and how we can be really intentional when students come through the door. So it's brief counseling, and we see students every other week when it comes to individual therapy, and you're going to see in a minute what our stepped care model is and how we describe our full range of options. But if you do individual therapy, it's every other week. This past year, as you saw, we served over 7% of the student population, and my goal is to get to about 10%, and that's pretty much the target number that you try to go for when it comes to direct mental health services. So last year was 7%. As well as we do offer group-based and workshop services. So we offer 18 groups weekly. So those are weekly services for students. So not everything is bi-weekly. We do have quite a bit of weekly support as well. And the other thing that I wanted to communicate was there's no wait time for services. So we have a walk-in triage model. So when a student wants to get services, all they have to do is walk into the student counseling services between 8 and 3, Monday through Thursday, and we do a walk-in triage where we meet with the student, we review their history, we review a little bit about what they're wanting to accomplish, and we come up with a support plan based on the available services that we have, and you'll see that again in a minute. But I just wanted to point that out, that there is no wait time for services if you need access. Also, crisis services between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, we are available for crisis. Kind of our trend so far this semester is we've averaged about 30 students walking in daily to initiate services. So I just want to kind of put that data point out there for you too. So the next slide, it's a little hard to see, but what we wanted to do was tell our story effectively in terms of what types of services do we offer at Student Counseling Services. And I want you to look at this and think about it as us creating a system to meet the continuum of needs of mental health needs on campus. So it's not just individual counseling. It's thinking bigger picture, how do we have the most impact with the most number of students? Some of you might have seen, I've gone out and done plenty of presentations on supporting students. I've done presentations on psychological first aid. We've done quite a bit, and Brian will talk about it, about suicide prevention, gatekeeper training. So we think about how do we have that impact across all of campus and not just individually within our office. So looking at this, as you can see at the very bottom, we have self-help, and we're exploring self-help options. One of the big things that we're really excited about is we're exploring some online resources for that, where if you hear about a student saying, hey, I've been stressed lately, you could say, did you know the Counseling Center has some self-help resources? And you can hand that to them and they can have immediate access. So we're trying to grow out that option where a student doesn't have to come through the door to get these services. They can get them at any time. We're also done and grown out community of care trainings when it comes to, like I said earlier, suicide prevention, psychological first aid, different things like that, supporting students in distress in the classroom, all kinds of trainings. We have a number of suicide prevention trainings, Cognito, Campus Connect, and Respond. We've also expanded Let's Talk. Has anybody heard of Let's Talk in this room? Okay. Let's Talk is an opportunity to walk through the door and meet with a counselor for 15 minutes. And it's not a clinical interaction. It's just the opportunity to talk and get some advice and think a little bit about next steps. It's a good entry point for individuals if they don't know what counseling is. And we have that 3 days a week right now. I believe it's 6 hours at the Multicultural Student Center, I believe is where it's at in the Union. That's an example of that type of resource that we built out where it's not just coming to the Counseling Center. You can have access in all these different areas. We also do biofeedback and light therapy. Not everybody knew that we offered light therapy. So part of this stepped care idea is telling our story about the range of services. So as you can see, really it's built out to meet the continuum of needs. And then we have the group-based services, where an individual could talk about mental health concerns with 8, 9, or 10 other students. I typically say I'm pretty interesting, but if you hear the same type of stuff from 8, 9, 10 other students, it can be incredibly powerful. It replicates the classroom, it replicates real life, and so that's an example of group-based services. There's a new service that we have that I want to mention. We do have a certain number of students that walk through our door that come in crisis, and that their needs are beyond the scope of what counseling center is able to offer based on the standard of care of what they're coming in for. And we have this new service, it's up there, called care management, where we have providers that will provide bridge care for them to the community and see them multiple times per week as needed to make sure that they're, one, safe, that they're building some skills, and that they're connected. So we've enhanced that level of care for those students at most at need this year in terms of, it's called care management. So as you can see, it's built out to really manage the wide range of needs on campus. So when a student walks through the door, we have all these options for them. And by enhancing all these different levels, it makes us much better adequate to manage the increased demand of services.
Hi, everyone. Student wellness, as many of you know, is a newer department within student health and wellness unit. So we're starting our third academic year on campus. And as Erin had mentioned before, we are really the health promotion, health education, prevention. That's our main focus within student wellness. So we're really looking at public health approach, looking at population level health to impact holistic student health and well-being. So just a couple updates for us. We're in the process of a search for our student wellness director, which will be beginning soon, and also for Green Dot coordinator. So our current Green Dot coordinator took another job on campus recently. So we have a couple staff positions open, so we're going to be launching those searches this fall. So we'll have more information about that. You'll see information when the candidates and things come on campus. So as Chris had talked about and alluded to, last year we received a federal SAMHSA grant for suicide prevention and mental health promotion. So we were able to hire a new person within student wellness, a health promotion coordinator that focuses specifically on suicide prevention and mental health promotion as part of her role. So I wanted to just highlight a few of the things that we have rolling out this year. So as Chris had talked about, Cognito and Campus Connect are two that I wanted to highlight. So Campus Connect is a 3-hour in-person training really focused on student gatekeepers. So it's the students that are in positions where they're oftentimes meeting a lot with other students, or students are coming to them, and to give them some of the skills on signs, things to look for, how to navigate conversations, and how to help refer students to resources on campus and to get them the assistance that they may need. Cognito is an online suicide prevention training, and we're in the process of getting that purchased now, and our plan is to launch that in a similar way that we launch Alcohol EDU. So over the summertime, as incoming students are coming in, we'll be doing it around a similar time frame. So all incoming students will get this training as well. It's about 45 minutes to an hour, provides some of the similar information, just in a little bit different format, with it being online, a little bit condensed, so that all incoming students, the purpose for that is to really have more of a population level initiative for suicide prevention. So all incoming students are going to know up front just some really basic skills, some of the resources and things we have on campus to really help them set them up when they get to Iowa State. As I mentioned, Green Dot, I know a lot of people in here are probably pretty familiar with Green Dot. That's our power-based violence prevention program. This Friday, it's celebrating its third anniversary. So outside of the Student Services building, we'll have free cookies, some swag, T-shirts. So definitely feel free to stop by. This year we hired some new student employees, some Green Dot coordinators that are really going to help us in terms of programmatic outreach and training. So as you all know, Green Dot, there's a lot particularly in the training and the outreach and the programmatic sense. And having these student employees for us has been really helpful to get started. So they just started this year as part of our student employee team. We're really excited to have them. Green Dot continues to have a huge impact on campus, training a couple thousand students, faculty, and staff every single year, as well as a variety of different programs. And our Green Dot coordinator works really closely with academic departments and other offices on campus to help them infuse different strategies and things within their own spaces, really to make our campus safer. So wanted to also highlight, we have a newer, we've been working a lot on our alcohol and other drug intervention programs. So one that's launching this fall is called BASICS. It stands for Brief Alcohol and Screening Intervention for College Students. So students that may potentially violate some type of university policy related to alcohol and other drugs, or can be referred from another campus resource. It's a 2-session in-person, two-session in-person, I just lost my train of thought, program, really focused on harm reduction for alcohol and marijuana use. So the first session is a group session, and then the second session is individual. So it's really focused on helping the student kind of understand where their current use and behaviors are, and then really working to identify some strategies and ways that they can really reduce any kind of negative consequences or harm that they may be experiencing connected to their substance use. So it's a really exciting program. It's a really good partnership with our counseling psychology program and faculty and students on campus. So we just are launching that this fall, so we're really excited about that. And then connected also to substance use is we're in the process of developing a collegiate recovery program. So this fall, we're hoping to launch a student organization connected to students in recovery. And that's not just connected to students for substance use or students who are in recovery, but is also open to students that may have a connection in some sort of way to recovery. So maybe a parent or a friend or family member, or maybe they're just an ally of folks that are in recovery, the recovery community. So it's really open to anybody. And this group is really focused on peer support and community building. So planning some different types of events, social engagement for them to be able to interact and to build community. So that's a really important piece. So we're in the process of starting that student organization now. This past Saturday, we had our first sober tailgate, and we're looking to plan some other kind of substance-free programming and event throughout the year too for students. So really excited about that program getting off the ground, and that'll be an incremental approach over time with different things that we continue to add to the program, different types of resources and support for students. So, but that's our main goal this year, is to get that student organization off the ground and running. So we'll have more information around promotion. We have some promotional materials and things that we'll have ready in this next couple weeks, so we'll be able to get that to you all, so you can help us spread the word on that. And then I want to go to the next slide. So I know later today, I think you all are going to be talking about the Get Yourself Tested program. There was a partnership with student government last year, helping to fund that program. Just wanted to highlight a couple of data points from that. So the Get Yourself Tested program was really structured to help remove a lot of the barriers that students can experience connected to STD testing. A lot of students that we hear from, and that's in data that we review as both ISU and nationally, is that students are concerned around costs can be an issue. Having the test billed to their parents' insurance, not being able to have time, make appointments, those types of things. All those different components are different barriers for students. So what we tried to do is develop a program within Thielen Student Health Center that removed a lot of those different barriers. So we held 6 Get Yourself Tested events in the spring of 2019. As soon as we put those out, it was a really popular event. All the slots filled almost immediately. So we were able to get really good attendance. We administered 236 tests through that program. So over the course of the 6 different events, they did testing for 236 people. We also captured a variety of different demographic data, risk behavior data, as well as satisfaction data for the program. So every student that went through, after they were done, filled out a survey. So we're able to collect a survey from every single student that went through. And we had a really diverse student population, over 15% identified within the LGBT community, 35% of students identified as a race other than white. So we had a high number of students of color that came through, LGBT students. We specifically marketed to a lot of our campus partners that work really closely with some of those students, so that was a really important part of the program as well, to get information out and market it to students that we know that may be of interest and need for it. So this last slide, just wanted to highlight a couple of the programmatic data points from the program. So 80% of the students that had come through had never been to Thielen Student Health Center for STD testing before the Get Yourself Tested program. So it brought in a lot of new people to Thielen Student Health Center for this service, which is really important. It's really great. They were able to learn a little bit more about Thielen. A lot of them, just anecdotally from what we had heard from students, was that some students didn't even know that this was an opportunity at Thielen. So it was a great point for education that the nursing staff and other medical providers could provide to the students, just to let them know. 55% of students said that they wouldn't have come to Thielen to get tested without the program because of various barriers. So some of the things I highlighted before, having the convenient location, insurance, cost because it was free for students, having it be a quick appointment, were among some of the top areas that students had identified within the survey that was important to them. And was why they came to the GYT program in the first place. And then just from satisfaction survey data, 100% of students, so all the students that had responded, indicated they were either extremely satisfied or satisfied with the program. We had a lot of really positive response, like I said, anecdotally of students after the fact telling us that, but then also on the survey they had indicated that. And 99% of students had said that they would come back to Thielen to get an STD test if the program had continued. So they had a really good experience with it and wanted to come back. So just wanted to share, this isn't all the data, but just wanted to highlight some of the different data points that we collected just to let you know. Since you all helped fund that last year, I wanted to be able to provide some of the programmatic and satisfaction data connected to that program. So I think that's all that we have. So myself, Erin, and Chris would be happy to answer any questions if you all have any at this time.
Questions for a speaker? Senator Searles.
Permission to address the speaker.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for coming. I do have a couple questions. I just want to say really quick, as a community advisor, I just want to say I really appreciate the resources y'all provide. I know it greatly impacts the community. It's super helpful. Everything's been super helpful. I'd love to see the expansion and community impact. Two questions. One, on the second to last slide, it said that there were 10 reactive tests on the Get Yourself Tested. What does that mean exactly?
Those are the students that had tested positive. So of the students that came through, those were the of the STD tests that they did. We had 10 reactive tests. Yeah.
Second question, less stressful. What day did you say the cookies were?
So this Friday from 11 to 1, outside of the Student Services building, we'll have a couple tables out, and we'll be giving away shirts, buttons, stickers, and ISU dining cookies, like the big sugar cookies with the green frosting. I can't hype it up enough. It's really good. Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, tell your friends.
I yield.
Senator Heasley.
Permission to address the speaker.
Yes, you may.
Hi, thank you guys for coming in. I want to say I'm a big fan of all you do for everyone here on Iowa State campus. And then I wanted to ask, how did the esports situation come about?
That's a great question. It actually came from students. So there was a student organization that was really active, and they chatted with some of our recreation services staff, and we thought, well, this could be new and creative. It's really a trend out in recreation services right now across the country. So we wanted to find a way that we could support that in a way that could be really healthy and community building.
Awesome. I've heard a lot of great responses from it, so rise and grind, gamers.
Senator Blair.
Permission to address?
Yes, you may.
So, not nearly as fun of a question. So a couple weeks before the school year started, the current administration enacted a gag rule on Title X funding. Title X funding is a federal program that provides grants for low-income people to access birth control, STI testing, family planning, all sorts of really essential services. The majority of these people are people of color, especially Latinx people. Most are under 30. So it's really a lot of our campus. It really allows people to like make decisions about their own bodies, especially right now when you're in school and you're looking towards your future. It's really important that people can access these services. There's a lot of politics around why it happened. But what it means is that our local Title X facility, which was Planned Parenthood, no longer receives funding. I personally know people who have been affected who don't receive birth control anymore because of this funding change. So I wanted to know, what is Thielen doing, what is Student Wellness doing to help make sure these people have access to this really essential care, especially since the closest Title X facility is now in Des Moines, about 37 minutes drive. So what can we do to fix this?
Yeah, this is a concerning topic to us too. So the Thielen Student Health Center does provide a wide range of birth control services, so pills, injections, implantable devices, and that's available to all students. If cost is an issue, the Student Health Center has a sliding fee scale, so all you have to do is fill out an application. It's based on income, and then we'll work with you. We don't ever want cost to be a barrier for students to receiving care, so that's what we're trying to do to deal with that, and then, of course, be engaged with policy and advocate where we can, because those are really important services for students and everyone to have.
Senator, do you yield? Senator Rinchi.
Permission to address the speaker. Thank you again for coming in here today. I was curious. I was just looking at the numbers that you provided, and I was curious if you could give some insight. So from 2017 to 2019, we saw a decrease in stress, but in the same period, we saw a really substantial increase in anxiety among students. Could you talk about why those seem to be moving in opposite directions and what that means for our students?
So, it is an interesting data point. This is, and Erin can add to this a little bit. We survey students, and this is what they're reporting. I can say that anxiety and depression, anxiety and stress in general have significantly increased over the years. Looking at that, it might have been the way people define it or answer to that. Because one of the interesting points about putting this up, which I do like this data point, it says this directly impacts my academic performance. So there's a little bit of a variable there. So they're saying I experience stress and it directly impacts my academics. We know that impacts academics, right? If you look at the percent of students that say that I felt so overwhelmed over the past year that it's been difficult to function at times, that number's much higher. So we're at about 60%. These numbers are lower because these are students that are actually saying this impacts my academics. Students don't always make those connections because they're so used to being stressed, to be honest with you, their level, their area. So I would say it's been increasing. It might have just been the way this survey was administered in terms of the way students received it. But overall, I would say stress is definitely increasing. I can't stress enough that, so this past year, 67% of students reported feeling lonely within the past year. It's usually about 50% reported feeling so overwhelmed it was difficult to function. So the numbers are higher. I don't know if that's helpful and answers that question, but they are higher. Anything you want to add to that?
I think the other thing I would say is over the past 3 years, we've been really trying to make some focus too on providing education of what does anxiety look like, what does stress look like, because it shows up different for every person. So that's one of the things student wellness really works on in terms of education and prevention and promotion. And we're just seeing a lot of people that sometimes you may think that, my stomach's really hurting, or there's signs that are manifesting physically, and then what it ends up being is anxiety or stress or depression or those type of things. So some of it, I think, is just overall student awareness, too, of how that can show up differently, and then being able to report that differently.
Just one more thing. I've also been impressed by the change in stigma, and that students are much more willing and able to identify it. Yes, this is something that actually is impacting me, and it's more than I feel like is at a level that it's actually impacting me in my life, impacting the quality. So I think they're more willing to share it too.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the insight. And then I also wanted to thank you just for, I had a friend who I took into Thielen today. So thanks for the great care that you guys provide, and they were able to help get us on to getting him taken care of. So thank you. I yield.
Senator Stanley.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming in. I especially appreciate the data on the Getting Yourself Tested program. That will be very useful later on. So on the student counseling services slide, I noted that you said that there were counselors available from 8 to 3 for walk-in hours, and then from 8 to 5 for urgent situations. Are there any counselors? Are there any services available outside of those times from it looks like 5 p.m. to 8 a.m.?
So in terms of crisis services after hours, we have a crisis text line. It's 741-741, where students can text. If they text ISU to it, it allows us to collect data. But we provide these students with these resources. So there's a text line, and there's also 2 different phone call lines that they can call for crisis, where they can get immediate support. Those would be the types of services that we have after hours. So whenever we meet with a student, it's highly visible on our website, but we also provide students with those resources. We found that the text, students are a lot more likely to reach out utilizing that type of service.
Awesome. And with the new facility that's been proposed, I see that, you mentioned that it was being approved by university leadership. Do you have any tentative financials on that?
We don't at this point in time because we're looking at probably about 6 different options. Of course, a lot of that would be student fee based, and there is a lot of sensitivity about not putting more fees on students. So we're trying to look at that and be really creative. I would just add to what Chris said to our groups. Some of our groups at counseling are in the evening. Also, Thielen has hours until 6 p.m. on Mondays, and then we have hours on Saturdays from 9 to noon. So if students felt like that was an avenue that they wanted to access mental health services, that's an opportunity as well. And then if you call the Thielen Student Health Center line, so it's on the back of your book, so 294-5801. Anytime Thielen's open, you can get connected with a nurse and get advice, whether it's mental health related or any kind of health question. And if we're not open, we have nurses available 24/7, 365 for you all students to ask questions.
Wonderful. Thank you again for coming in.
Sarah Oligard.
Yes, you may.
Yes, you may.
So quick question regarding the esports to start. I had heard that there's potential of converting one of the Bayer racquetball courts as part of that. Can you just confirm, just touch on that?
We're going to test my memory for a second since Mike's not here. But yeah, I believe they're going to repurpose 2 of the racquetball courts to be the esports room.
And then sort of back to the counseling, I guess maybe this might be more directed towards Chris. As a vet med senator, we have the equivalent of 1 full-time counselor on site. There's 2 of them. They're able to triage during normal business hours. But with 600 of us and 2 people, that's not always feasible. So we do use a lot of resources out here. I do know that the expansion or the triage hours here between 8 to 3, they usually estimate a 1.5 to 2 hour wait time. I know that most graduate professional students don't have that, and a lot of undergrads probably don't too. Is there a plan to potentially expand or minimize that length of triage?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to speak to that. So we advertise 90-minute wait time because it takes about 30 minutes to fill out the paperwork, and there could be a little bit of a wait time in terms of the number of students we're being seen at the same time. Noon is a very popular time. There's times where we have 5 people coming in at the same time. Interesting. So half hour for the paperwork, a few minutes to wait, up to about a half hour, and then you're seen for a half hour. So that's actually, it's not a 90-minute, it's a 90-minute process. It's not a 90-minute wait time. So I definitely appreciate that because that allows me to clarify a little bit of that. The paperwork could take 15 minutes depending on the individual, and it's very important. It's part of our consent process.
Sure.
Yep.
And then also in related to counseling, sort of piggybacking on what Senator Stanley was asking about. So 8 to 5 or even 8 to 3 are great for counseling services. However, there are some student populations that need times outside of that. And I do know that when I initially had entered counseling myself, it was really hard to find even community partners that work within non-traditional timeframes or even on the weekends. So is there either a plan to expand non-traditional hours of Thielen or working with more community partners to expand that access, or what can you comment, I guess, on that topic?
Yeah, and I could start and you know, and one thing I meant to say a minute ago is we have about 5 to 6 clinicians per day assigned to those walk-in triages. So to manage and work effectively and efficiently with those 30-plus individuals, we have 5 to 6 people assigned to that, and it's a big resource allocation, but it's very important. Access is important to us. If you come after 3 o'clock, you're still seen for crisis, and then we help get you connected to our regular walk-in hours. So you're still seen between 8 and 5. We offer, currently it's 2 groups after 5 o'clock on Tuesday nights. Based on trends and based on student needs, we have expanded those group offerings at night. The other piece I will say, which kind of addresses this, is expanding into the online really helps us provide access 24/7 to helpful resources. So we are exploring some specific programs that are evidence-based treatments for specific concerns, a wide range of concerns actually, and we'll be kind of sharing those once we further that. But what I like about that is that somebody could get services at 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning. Of course, it's self-help, but within that there are assessments, there are links to crisis services built into it. So it allows students to get services when they want it. And we're always listening to students. So when I hear about these types of things, we can explore options. And that's where those Tuesday night groups came from.
Well, thank you so much, and I yield.
Senator Samanu.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question, like, why don't you guys move to app-based information? Like, this is like too much, right? Why don't you guys move to like an app? Why don't you guys develop an app?
I love that, Ida. We actually have talked about that. We'd love to do it. So all of this is on our websites, but the apps would be so much better, right? So we're actively looking at that. Of course, apps have a high price tag that come with them, so we're trying to navigate that. But I love that idea, and yes, we actively are pursuing that.
One thing just to add on to that too, so for, we tend to give these out predominantly during first year student orientation in the summer. And orientation has their new orientation guide that just started, that app. So this was included on that app. So parents and students that used the app, which I think a lot of them did, this was on that as well, and we'll continue to do that in the future also. Yeah, and for my state, we've been working with some of the IT professionals that work with the My State app. And just in this last year, we've gotten added to the map feature where the condom dispensers are located on campus, as well as the publicly available microwaves. And we've heard from a lot of students that a lot of them are on campus for a really long time, maybe 12 plus hours during a day, and having options where they can be able to heat up food during the day is really important. So we actually, part of our pre-wellness educators actually expanded some of the access to microwaves, so we actually added them to multiple buildings, and then we also added it as a map feature within MySpace. We also added some of our health and wellness information to the contacts list, so that actually wasn't in there before. We added that into the directory so that students can have access to those numbers too. So we also added a couple things into the MyState app recently in this last year. So.
Thank you. But I would like to see like a separate app instead of like integrating them in like different things. Because like this is too much.
We concur. If anyone would like to do a project with us on that, we will take your skills. Completely agree.
Thank you. I
Further questions for our speaker? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming here. Moving on to open forum. Open forum is an open discussion for issues relevant to students. Anyone wishing to speak may approach the lectern. Seeing none, we move down to adopting the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to tonight's agenda? Speaker Culbertson.
I move to pick up from the table 2019-2-013 SG, seating at-large members to Finance Committee.
And where would you like that?
Oh, at the top of special orders.
2019-2-013 SD. There's been a motion to pick up the bill 2019-2-13 SD seating at large members to finance committees, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been added to the agenda. Speaker Culbertson. Senator Heasley.
I move to table for a week, 2019-2-015Y.
There's been a motion to table 2019-2-15Y, allowing unanimous consent for finance and bylaw amendment bills to the next meeting. And there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been tabled for next week. There's been a motion to move. There's been a motion to move to adopt tonight's agenda, and there's been a second. Is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections in adopting tonight's agenda? Seeing none, the agenda has been adopted. Moving down to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to last week's minutes? There's been a motion to adopt last week's meeting minutes, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the minutes has been adopted. Committee reports. Moving on to rules with Speaker Culbertson.
Okay, hi everyone. Rules Committee will start meeting at 8 a.m. on Fridays, so that'll be early. But we have a lot to do, so that'll be exciting to finally get started. If you have any bylaw changes and stuff like that, come run them by Rules Committee, and we can make sure that they're written well and that they follow all the rules we need to follow. Yeah.
Questions for our speaker? Seeing none, move into Finance Committee with Finance Director Mueller.
Hello? Okay. We have a couple bills that we are seeing this week. We will be seeing at-larges. We will be seating the at-larges today. Hopefully that goes smoothly. The Get Yourself Tested bill was sent no bias. We discussed it for a while after looking at last year's minutes for the same bill. Our at-larges also had not been, this was their first meeting, so they weren't sure exactly what to think of the whole funding process, so it felt fair that we should send it as no bias. We had a couple concerns with just looking at what happened last year, and I won't go into detail really about exactly what the debate was last year, but we kind of agreed that last year we had sent it with the idea that it was a one-time funding. So that was one of the issues that we brought up yesterday during our meeting. And we have four. Okay, we have, oh, that's great. We have four organizations, or I guess, yeah, four orgs on first read, and we will be having them come in next week, so be ready to see lots of organizations in the next couple of weeks. Lucy also has an asset revision bill with Senator Ludwig to look over the changes that we discussed last week. Please ask questions if you don't understand why we're doing what we're doing. Senator Litford was seated as Vice Chair of Finance Committee. Congratulations. Good job. So if you have questions and don't want to talk to me, go to Litford. Any questions?
Questions for our Finance Director? Seeing none, we move down to student initiatives with Senator Rowling.
Hi, everybody. So we met today and spoke further about some project ideas for the year, as well as possibly exploring some pop-up events. So look for an email about that possibly later in these next 2 weeks. In addition, we will be seating another at-large tonight, Elisa. She's wonderful, so I can't wait for you guys to get to hear all about her.
Questions? Seeing none, we move down to PR Committee with President Graber.
So Johnny's not here, but he sent me his update, so I'll read that all to you like I'm Johnny. Hello, everyone. PR Committee met for the first time tonight, and it went very well. We have unofficially filled in each spot of the committee, and we'll be inviting all members to Senate to be confirmed next week. We have people that are passionate about hosting events, growing our social media presence, and figuring out how to create a consistent level of hype that we see during election season. It is shaping up to be a great group of leaders and people. Also, Outreach Ambassadors is always looking for more applications, so please tap on some shoulders and reach out to Carrie for any questions or potential candidates. Johnny Murphy, Senior Director of Communications.
Questions? Seeing none, we move down to diversity and inclusion. Senator Klein, do you have
Klein.
any update for diversity and inclusion?
I haven't been confirmed to the committee. Am I okay to speak?
Yes.
All right, let's go then. So we just talked about several initiatives that we're working on. I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to give this one. We talked about several initiatives that we're going to work on. We had some lively debate about a few different issues. Am I okay to talk?
Yeah.
We're working on a flag ID. You know what? I don't know if I should mention it. Should I mention the initiatives that we're working on?
If you want me to talk about it, I can. Elena gave the update at the cabinet, so I can.
Sure.
Okay, so last year, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, they came up with an idea of a flag project to highlight all the countries represented by Iowa State students. They kind of ran into a roadblock in trying to make that permanent on campus, but this year they're looking at making it temporary. So at the beginning of the year, they'll have the flags up, and then in the middle of the year during like multicultural week, they'll put them up, or International Student Week, whatever event there would be. And then at the end during graduation, they'd also put them up. So she's going to be meeting with the International Student and Scholars Office, ISSO, and then the Multicultural Student Affairs Office as well to talk with that, as well as I think they want to look into putting it in the Memorial Union. So she'll be meeting with Steve as well. So.
Questions? Senator Searles.
I don't know if you have an answer. I don't know who this is directed to, but about the flag program, is there any conversation about including Native American tribal flags in that?
That's a great question. I'm sure Elena would love to include that, but yeah, awesome, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, we move down to civic engagement with Senator Toinette.
Alrighty, so yesterday was National Voter Registration Day, woot woot. If you didn't volunteer for a booth, I hope you saw some of the lovely League of Women Voters representatives around campus. We are setting up a weekly meeting time right now. I have been meeting with the individual members and kind of figuring out where we want to move forward with it. But yeah, civic engagement is going to start picking up pretty quickly.
Questions for Senator Toinette? Seeing none, we move down to comments from the executive branch with President Graber.
Awesome, so this is an update from me, actually. So the first thing I have on the update is executive orders. So I realized that we seated our cabinet positions through Senate orders, but they're actually supposed to be through executive orders. So I made all those executive orders, and I sent them all to you, so feel free to check them out. They're just seating people, so there's no objections to that. And then last week we went down to Council Bluffs and had a Board of Regents breakfast meeting with the Board of Regents, and we talked about them. We talked to them about tuition, their increase proposals. We fought back on kind of the reasoning behind that, and hopefully they'll think about that down the road. They were really impressed with the ISU ID cards being able to be used as a voter ID because the University of Iowa and UNI cannot do that, so we were flexing on them, which is pretty cool. Also, we filmed our officially first fireside chat yesterday with Officer Greider of ISU PD. We talked about campus safety. It was a lot of fun, and we got a lot of insight about the resources that Iowa State PD provides. In addition, we are looking into creating a West Student Office Space Task Force. So this would be looking at our West Sauce spot, student government spot, and seeing how can we get the most out of it. Are we utilizing the space to the best of the ability? We look at short-term goals and what we want to do with it right now, and then what we ultimately want to do down the road, and if that's even the best spot possible. If you're interested in heading the task force or you just want to be involved, feel free to reach out to any of the chief officers, and we'll be able to talk to you about that. And then we just have a bunch of meetings. Vish and I have a meeting with Vice President Bhatia, and I have a meeting tomorrow with President Winterstein to give some updates. And then we had a meeting with our state relations officer yesterday, and then our national relations officer today to talk about federal policy and how that affects Iowa State students.
Questions for President Graber? Seeing none, we move down to external matters. Within external matters, General Orders 2019-2-9F, funding AIM Student Association for Malaysians. with Senator Lifford.
All right, so I'm going to pass my time to Finance Director Mueller. Understands there's one.
Oh, it's already on. Okay. So this was a bill, so I think I talked about this last week, but this organization was funded on February 27th of 2019 for this event that they held in the spring. Now, somewhere along the way, this piece of paper got lost that was signed by President Neely and Vice President Bibaloni, so we just don't have record of this ever being funded. So it was totally nobody to blame. We have no clue what happened with it. So moving forward, we just told the club, hey, we'll be willing to fund you for the exact same event. They're planning on holding this event again anyway. So we said, we'll give you the funding that we were going to for this event last year, and we'll give it to you this year. So I told the org they didn't need to be here because it was totally on our part. So if anybody has questions, direct them to me. I worked a lot with this club, so let me know. I'll answer the best that I can.
Questions? Senator Rinchi.
Does this fall in any way underneath any events that we can't fund because they're reoccurring?
This is not the Excellence Fund, so no, we're all good.
Okay.
Oh, this is coming from special projects. So what this money was going to originally come from special projects anyway last year, and this account doesn't get zeroed out or anything. So the money just wasn't moved from last year. So it's just as if we funded this last year. It really doesn't make a difference. But yes, it's definitely funding eligible. We're funding it at $8 a plate per person. That's what it says in PNC, that we are allowed to fund cultural organizations for cultural food. Is $8 a plate per person. So that is what we did last time. It's the same this year.
Senator Hanyang.
Question for Finance Director Mueller. Will the organization plan to use the funding from this act for the same light item for their next cultural event?
Yes, so they asked for, last year, they asked for this in addition to $1,800 that we had already given them. This year they asked for $1,700 for the event. They assume that they're going to have a large number of people again. So I know they'll at least have this number of people. It's usually a huge event. So yes, they are planning on using it the exact same way that they would have last year.
All right. Unless there is any other questions, I'll call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will move into a roll call vote. Senator Alucard. Yes. Bender. Yes. Blair. Yes. Khan. Yes. Colbertson. Yes. Dollinger. Yes. Fritz. Yes. Green. Yes. Hanyang. Yes. Heasley. Johnson. Yes. Class. Yes. Klein. Yes. Klein. Yes. Lifford. Yes. Ludwig. Yes. Meredith. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Rice. Yes. Rinchi. Yes. Rolling. Yes. Samanu. Strader. Yes. Searles. Yes. Stanley. Yes. Samuel. Yes. Tonette. Yes. Zastro. Yes. With a vote of 27 to 0, this funding request passes. Moving on to funding 2019-2-10F, funding Get Yourself Tested program, student STD testing with Senator Lifford. Do you want to yield their time? Do you want to yield their time to them?
Yeah, I yield my time.
So I'll just start with, what questions do you have?
Senator Class.
All right. Okay. So first up, as this is just a statement, we are debating not the mayor's bestie testing, rather if student government should use student activity fee to fund this. That out of the way. Last year we funded $13,500 for 300 tests at 45 apiece. This year we are funding 400 at 55 apiece. Could you speak to the increase in cost for
So I had connected with some of the professionals at Thielen Student Health Center, specifically the lab manager there. Part of it is related to just the increasing costs over time. Sometimes the costs go up, so part of it covers that. The other part of it is anytime that there is a reactive test, so if a student tests positive, there has to be a second confirmatory test. So part of that is to have enough to be able to cover. So if there are, that those are also free for students, because those depending on the type of test, like for HIV, it tends to be pretty expensive. So it's to help cover that. The challenge with the funding part is that so we say 400 at the 55 apiece. Not every student that goes through is going to need every single test. So that's basically like the max amount, essentially, of like what we would need, of how many we could do. Last year, we didn't use all the funding because we didn't need to, I think, based on how many we were able to do. So like you said, it was 236 based on that. So that's basically if every single student came in and got the full basically STD kit, so the syphilis, chlamydia, gonorrhea, and HIV testing, but not everybody necessarily would need that. Does that help answer that question? Okay.
So do you buy each of those tests? So you said the 5 things are working. Do you buy each of those tests individually and like you base it off of need, like you do more gonorrhea instead of chlamydia or things, or you just buy 400 of all of them and that costs the 55 for the whole?
Yeah. So they have a lot of basically tests on hand within Thielen, so they're not necessarily like buying 400 and then having them on stock. It's basically like reimbursing after the fact. So when we have a program, then based on the types of testing that they're using, they're basically using part of that funding, however much it was for each of the different events, up until the max amount of whatever it was. Yeah.
And then, so these are like supposed to be free and confidential to like decrease barriers.
Yep.
For the tests that are positive, I presume there would be prescriptions afterwards. Are those provided through this funding? Because if you're getting a prescription, that still has to go on your insurance or a bill somewhere, so that kind of negates the confidentiality of it or like the anonymousness of it from your parents, I guess, if that's a barrier to funding.
Yep, that's a really good point. So it is something that, so we actually had a conversation this morning with looking at just kind of options and opportunities like within the state of Iowa. So there's a program called Community-Based Screening Services. We had a conference call with them this morning just looking at if Iowa State would potentially be able to be, an option or a site for that. So over time, like depending on if it works out, there's a lot that goes into it and enrolling. If we get accepted as part of it, that program does have the free medication piece that comes with it. But for students, this is just strictly a screening program. So the Get Yourself Test program is strictly a screening program, but then they would work with the students to get them the treatment that they would need connected after that. So the funding was just specifically this time for basically the screening part, but we are looking at options to be able, because that is a really important point that you bring up. So we are exploring those options right now. So we had, like I mentioned, we had a conference call this morning to look at what's potential, like what are the potentials within the state to be able to look at that. So.
Another question, sorry.
Yep, you're good.
So some people have mentioned that there's nonprofits. Obviously, we have Planned Parenthood across the street, but there's mentioned like a truck comes on campus and does that. Do you know if that's still happening this year? Is that something that Thielen does, or that's the student government fund?
Yep, that's a great question. So primary healthcare is actually the one that has the mobile testing unit. They purchased that, I think, about 2 years ago. So that's located in Des Moines. So it's actually our office that worked with primary healthcare to bring them the 2 times that they came on campus. They have a pretty full schedule. Like I said, they're based in Des Moines. It takes a lot of staff time for them to come up. It's not a guarantee every year that they can come. It's kind of, we usually reach out to them pretty early to see kind of when the opportunities that they can come, those kinds of things. So typically it's 1 time, maybe sometimes 2 within an academic year that they can make it up, usually for about a 4-hour time period, just by the time that they can get up, get everything set up, and then for them to get back in time. So that's the only mobile testing unit kind of within the area that's reasonable from a community partner perspective for us to be able to bring. Like I said, we do have a primary healthcare location that is in Ames. They also do free and confidential testing. I don't remember the dates off the top of my head, but it is on the Student Wellness website of options that they do have available. Otherwise, Thielen Student Health Center at any time between 8 and 5, students can go and make an appointment to get STD testing. I think as Senator Blair had mentioned earlier, particularly with with Planned Parenthood and the issues with the Title X funding, obviously their costs have gone up and that can be a barrier. So losing that as a community partner has definitely had an impact as well within the community for students in terms of options that they have available. So,
Senator Rowland.
Hi, thank you again for coming today. I have just a couple quick questions for you. First being, were all the tests used last year?
So, I mean, in terms of like the testing, basically it's like however many they administered, they just worked with the finance person just to reimburse for that much, and then I think whatever was left over, to my knowledge, was given back. If not, I don't know what happened to that. I don't work within Thielen, so I wasn't sure specifically, but basically it's more of like a reimbursement piece. So however, based on the students that come into the program, whatever tests that they're taking, whatever the costs of those are, then that's what they used to bill. So it's kind of that 13,000 amount that was last year was kind of just like the balance and then just kind of worked down from there, if that makes sense.
Awesome, thank
Yep.
you. So we saw an increase in the quantity of tests from last year to this year.
Mhm.
Could you speak to why there is an increase if all of them were not used? And specifically, were there any students who were turned away from this testing last year?
Yep. So no students were turned away. We had specific appointments that students could sign up for. And I think they had a couple that they held after the time too. So most of the sessions were about 3 hours. They also had additional appointments after the fact. So if we did have overflow or extra students, they were able to get them in or to be able to schedule them for another time that they could fit in within Thielen. So students were able to be seen. So anybody that called was able to be seen. And then for the cost piece, I don't know if you had the same question from before, so I'll give the same answer. But it's basically with the increase in the cost of just the test itself, that was what led to the slight increase there. And then it's also to help cover if there are any of the reactive tests, to also cover those as part of the program. Because last year, Thielen Student Health Center covered those costs. It wasn't part of that, so Thielen actually footed the bill for that. So this year, we wanted to make sure that those funds were included within the program.
Okay. Lastly, do you think that hosting this program on campus makes testing more accessible to students other than going off campus?
I do. I mean, with students having classes on campus with Thielen Student Health Center, obviously specializing in students and working with students, a lot of the medical providers there work really closely with students. So we worked really closely with the Thielen Student Health Center Enterprise to be able to create a program that would be able to mimic what the community-based programs offer. So in the sense of having it where it's a quick appointment, confidential, so not showing up on parents' insurance free, those types of things. So to mimic kind of a quick visit where they what they would see in the community, I think does help increase access. Also in the sense that they can schedule it to fit within their time. So we had a bunch of block times scheduled out, so students were able to kind of fit them in. The challenge that we ran into in the past with the mobile testing unit was that when we brought that to campus, the demand was so overwhelming that students were waiting upwards of 2 hours in line. So the challenge with more of a walk-in type model like that is you have a bunch of students waiting in line. Some students had said we didn't advocate for it, of course, but some students were like, well, I have to miss class because of this. So the reason we set it up specifically was to have the specific times that they could do it so that they were able to get in quick, fit it within their schedule to help increase access that way so they weren't waiting in line for a long period of time, which is unfortunately the reality with the testing unit because they only have 2 providers. Within Thielen, we can have upwards of 4 to 6 at a time, so you can just see more students. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
My last question then is, are you expanding those hours or the amount of times that you will this year from the previous years?
So part of that is dependent on, so like with the lab as an example, particularly with chlamydia, gonorrhea, they're running those tests in-house, and you can only do a certain amount at a certain time, and it takes a amount of time. So part of it is dictated by that. In terms of staffing and how much they can do, we can definitely look at, if the bill does pass, we can definitely look at or work with students around, so we're happy to work with Rye or anybody else in terms of like what are the timing, times that may make sense for students during business hours, the length of time, how many events, those types of things. That's all very fluid and open. The model we did last year was just kind of based on some of the student input we had, but that's pretty flexible. I think we can work with that depending on, there's some limits to that based on staffing and based on the realities of the testing and how long it takes to get those through, but.
Excellent. Thank you
Yep,
so much
no
again.
problem.
I yield.
Senator Searles.
Okay, I have a couple questions as well. So it looks like there's going to be 5 months that are intended to be funded here. Are these, what is the breakdown of testing availability during those months? Is it another certain dates during those months that they're able to schedule during that?
Yep, that's a great question. So this is kind of another piece that can be a little bit more flexible in the sense of, so last year we just did, I think it was like 2 events per month. So I think it was, or actually I think it was maybe 3 in March and 3 in April. I couldn't remember based on the timing of the bill when it came out. But the idea was to kind of have like 2 a month essentially and just kind of spread it out to avoid January just because students are getting back from winter break and not having a whole lot of time in terms of promotion and scheduling. And then also avoiding May just because of graduation. So to try to hit the months in terms of where we could have 2 events kind of every other week and alternating the times too. That was just kind of the idea. Really, it can be more, it can be less. It just kind of depends on staffing and what students are interested in. So that was just kind of a template model that we threw up to get started. So to kind of mimic what happened last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I'm understanding correctly, the 400, like you said, that's kind of the cap maximum so that you can cover everything. And that's including the extra tests in case there's a reactive test, correct?
Yeah, so the $55 piece essentially is also kind of helping to create some of the pool of that, because not every student's going to need the reactive piece. And it also depends on how many, like I said, how many tests are being used. So that's as every single student had every single test done, which would be the $55, which isn't always necessarily the case, because that's based on risk behavior. So when students are filling out a form when they get there, it's based on risk behaviors and other types of things that are indicating what types of tests they may need or what they want. So that number is not hard and fast. It's just a rough estimate in terms of roughly how many students probably would be with that amount of funding.
Okay. And the final question, the final question I have, which I think a lot of people are curious about, last year this was funded with the assumption or the understanding that this was a one-time funding event. We see obviously it's come back, there's a huge increase. I am pleased to see that it was used to the best of its ability.
Yep.
And not only were 10 people allowed to see that they had to get further testing, but 226 were allowed to breathe a little lighter after getting that testing.
Yep.
Moving forward, if this were to be funded tonight, how do we work? How does this program get off its feet a little bit more so that next year there is a guarantee that we don't have to have another contentious debate about it?
Yep. I appreciate that question. It's a really important one. So last year when we had that conversation, it was just kind of in the one semester. So this one's for a full year. So it's actually a little bit less if you kind of divide it up. It'd be about like 11,000 per semester is what we were kind of shooting for. So part of the reason of the increase is this is looking at a full academic year versus just a semester. That's one piece of it. And as I alluded to it before, I think it's a really important question in terms of sustainability of the program. We know STD rates are increasing not only nationally, but specifically in the state of Iowa, particularly within this age population. We know that funding sources and other places, particularly in the community around prevention, ebb and flow, go up and down. We know that can be a challenge. So one thing that Thielen staff, Thielen Student Health Center staff and Student Wellness staff are actively pursuing are options and things that we can do within the community to help supplement that. So as I mentioned this morning, we had a conference call with community-based screening services program to be able to look at, because they do provide free test kits to eligible areas as well as the free medication that can help offset. So if we're able to enroll into that program as an example, like that's an option that then we wouldn't need to come to student government. We could still do the same program that we have set up and be able to continue it long term. But that takes time. We may not be eligible. There's a lot of things that go into it. We aren't sure the outcome of that. We're actively pursuing and looking at things, grants that become available in the community, community partners, so like primary health care and others. We're kind of constantly working with them, engaging with them, seeing what we can do to be able to because really for us, it's really about providing free and confidential STD testing for students in whatever way that we can. So we're actively looking at different options and opportunities within the community. Right now, we don't have anything yet other than this program. So, yep.
That 30 seconds.
Yes. Can I say something?
30 seconds.
Okay, so I just wanted, Vice Speaker Schrader has a PowerPoint that Brian gave to me with a lot of student feedback that's actual data collected from that survey they gave back. So throughout this debate, I encourage you to ask questions that require data so that we can give that back to you so it's not just from one mouth, rather than it's from those 236 students that actually participated in this.
Senator Fritz.
May I address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
So am I correct in thinking that if, even if we don't fund this program, students are still able to get STD testing done at Thielen?
Yes.
Okay.
They always can. Yep.
Okay. So the next, my next question is about kind of the pricing of STD tests.
Mhm.
So how much, if if students had the Iowa State Student and Scholar Health Insurance Plan, do you know approximately how much it would cost for them to get an STD test?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Erin for that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Can't quote you the specific about that insurance. If you have the Student and Scholar Health Insurance Plan, mostly everything's covered under that.
Okay.
It's a really rich benefit plan. It has really good coverage. I will say to some of the questions earlier too, we have collectively over time tried to bring costs down for these tests. So for example, gonorrhea and chlamydia, we used to send out to an outside lab. It cost more money, it took longer time. So, when you're trying to get results back, wondering if you have a sexually transmitted infection, it's very nerve-wracking. We've actually brought the technology in-house. The test is cheaper now, and we can get you results in 3 hours. So we've tried to do things collectively over time to bring costs down for students.
Okay. And then how much would it cost if you didn't have any health insurance at all? Would it just be that $55?
It's a cost per test. We try to price those tests that are high need for students really competitively. So we're going to offer them a lot more competitively than other people potentially in the community. And then if cost is a barrier too, we have that sliding fee scale I mentioned that students can access based on their earnings and financial means.
Okay. So do you have like a specific number for that or a range at all?
If you qualify 100% with the sliding fee scale, prices are decreased, I think, at a minimum of 80%.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, too, with this program, the reason that it's a little bit different than if you went to Thielen to get tested, it would show up on your insurance or whatever. Your parents would be able to see it, even if you charge it to your U-bill and your parents have access to that. They would be able to see it, or whoever helps you pay for school, or if it's just you, then you just have access to it. But this Get Yourself Tested program, one of the biggest things, even Brian mentioned it earlier, was that students really liked the confidentiality of it, so that it was secret to them and only they knew about it, and their parents didn't have to know about any maybe behaviors that they didn't want them to know about, or just getting tested in general. So that was a really big plus for students, what this program provides for them.
Thank you.
Senator Klein.
Yeah, so it was mentioned that Thielen footed the bill for secondary testing on the 10 reactive tests. Can you give sort of a frame of reference on what that costs just for those, and then building off of it, maybe like what portion of the price increase per test goes towards the possibility of needing to do those secondary testings?
Yeah, I unfortunately probably don't have those numbers. I don't know if you would either. The only information I got when I had sent the email was basically the block numbers and just the explanation that it was those reasons as to why it had gone up. I know that the confirmation tests are pricey. They're definitely more expensive than, depending on the type of test, not for all of them, but they're a little bit more expensive than the other ones. So I unfortunately don't have that information. Yeah, sorry.
All right. Thank you. I yield.
Senator Ludwig.
Hi. So I really like this program. I think there are a lot of benefits to it in terms of anonymity and time and cost. But I do have concerns about kind of funding it just year to year. So
Yep.
I'm curious as to if anyone from Student Wellness can talk to how likely it is that there will be other sources of funding in the future, just because I'm concerned about us using the student activity fee to supplement the student wellness fee year to year. So.
Yep, I appreciate that question. So kind of something I mentioned before, we're always kind of actively looking and pursuing what funding is available, so whether that's from the Iowa Department of Public Health, any grants that they have, any community-based partnerships and funding that they have. Like I mentioned earlier, the community-based service screening service program that does provide free test kits. If we do qualify and are able to enroll in that and build that, that would be something that would basically help be able to keep this program going long-term without needing funding from student government or any other source from students on campus. So the hard part with that is it's hard to predict what types of funding are going to be available, particularly when it comes to grant dollars, particularly with nonprofit and their availability. So like us with working with primary healthcare, we have a really good partnership and relationship with them. It's just really dependent on their availability and when they can come in. So we're always kind of actively pursuing and trying to build those partnerships and have them come on campus. It's just hard to give like a really definitive kind of answer to that. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's all I have. I yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
So, in case you don't know, I was the only person to vote against this bill last year. Oh, there was two? I thought I was the only one. Thanks, Madison. I appreciated it. The only current senator to vote against the bill. Oh, there you go. But I voted against it on the basis that I didn't think the due diligence had been done with working with other nonprofits. I wasn't sure we were maximizing the money, and I wanted to wait a couple weeks and come back and make sure that we had the means we needed to have to assure that as we were giving a large amount of money that we did the due diligence. We're a year later, and I feel like it's been done. While I would like to have seen the long-term solution in place, government money is fickle, grant programs can often be hard to come by, and I do believe when we're told that they're looking into those situations. If you looked at special projects in the Mueller report, we have the ability to purchase this. We don't have the ability to purchase everything, but we have the ability to do things that are good. And this is a good thing for campus with positive benefits to our student body. And every single person who said it on the survey said that it was a good thing for them. I hope that we can find long-term solutions, but I also believe that everyone in this room hopes that. The question is, are we willing to spend the money to get it solved this year, to give a benefit to students this year that already paid their fees, that are just sitting in an account with student government? If you're a senior and we do not give services back for those fees, you just paid fees into an account that's going to sit there the entire year. We ought to do things that are good, and this is that. And with that, I'll yield.
Senator Searles.
Very glad I came after Vice Speaker Schrader because I thought my point might have made myself an enemy with some people, but I wanted to echo some of that. I did have a final question before I did that. If this is not funded, what confidential resources do our students have to get these tests?
So in the community, primary health care, Planned Parenthood. As I mentioned before, the challenge with with Planned Parenthood is with loss of Title IX or Title X funding that costs have gone up pretty substantially. I don't know the actual numbers on that, but I know that have gone up. But primary health care is an option availability, and then Thielen Student Health Center. Obviously, students can still get STD testing from there. So I don't know, if, Erin, if you want to speak to.
So students can always come in and get testing, and we do have cash prices for some of these sensitive tests. So if you don't want it to go on your insurance and your parents to see that, then we can work with you on that to bring a cash price so you don't have to put it through insurance if you're concerned about that aspect.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds like some of the community partners probably would go on insurance, which I believe probably wouldn't be confidential for many students. I'm kind of echoing Vice Speaker Schrader here. The thing that I'm having the cognitive dissonance, and this is to us who are going to vote on this, we are debating whether or not we should be funding this, not based on whether we support the program or not. But what we're also doing is if we're not funding it based on our P&C and based on our beliefs on whether it's eligible, we're holding students' health and students' access to health care kind of for ransom in a way. This is funding that we have and can contribute. I will be supporting this. To me, it makes no sense to say no. We gave half a year to get this program up and running. I wasn't here last year, but it sounds like there's still ongoing conversations, half a year to provide healthcare to almost 40,000 students isn't that long. So I like to see the continued initiative. There is a cost drop, and you mentioned semester breakdown. I think it's really important. Obviously, it's good for our students to have. With that, I am going to yield.
Speaker Culbertson.
Okay, hi. Less intense question. So I know last year a lot of the conversation was, again, like the contingency, stuff like
Yep,
that.
yep.
Did anyone from student government ever reach out to all of you to actually help you kind of figure that out? Or
So I was, yeah, it's a great question. I was in contact with Laura, who is the student health and wellness rep last year that helped write the bill. We worked with her throughout it. To kind of piggyback of what you had said earlier too, like we're very interested in actually welcoming and hoping that students within student government this year will help work with us this year to figure out long-term solutions. We're very, to help us figure out what's available in the community, how can we make this program long-term sustainable, those types of things. So we want to engage in those conversations. We want to have the conversations so that we don't need to come back, so that we can figure out how we can make this program that we've spent a lot of time building, that we know is effective and it's working and students really like it, that we can keep that going in a way that is cost effective, in a way that's sustainable long term. So I welcome and appreciate any students that would want to work with us this year to be able to look at what options we have and what we can do long term to be able to sustain this program. So,
okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That sounds like a great invitation to everyone. If you want to get this like funded long term and stuff like that, please make sure you're reaching out to them to work with them. These things tend to move a little faster on campus when we have more support behind them. So
Yes.
yeah, that's kind of my little note. So I yield.
Senator Rinchi.
So one quick question, or it's more of a comment, but
Yeah.
It sounds like people have a little bit of curiosity about the prices of these tests outside of this, and then also about the sliding scale. After today, would you be willing to just send us in some information to?
Yeah,
so we
I can
have
get that.
on
I can get that
reference?
information from our lab manager that can give a more detailed breakdown. I just can't really speak to it. I don't understand it as much as they do, but I can get that information and send it over.
Absolutely,
Yep.
that's all I had.
Yep.
I yield.
Senator Stanley.
Hello. Yeah, I don't have any questions. This is going to be just discussion. Yeah, like Vice Speaker Schrader said, I think the due diligence to secure additional funding has been done. It's commendable that they want to arrange funding early to make sure it's in place for the year. It was, I think, thought up, conceived last year a bit late in the game, so it's certainly not their fault that they're coming back with a quick turnaround. And I mean, if you go back and look at the rates of student participation and student satisfaction, one point that stuck out to me was that it brought new people into Thielen. So not only are we helping people use their student activity fee, but we're actually kind of double dipping. Not only are they using this service, but they're also then using the services from Thielen that they're also paying for. Now that being said, I haven't heard a single negative point here, so I'll make one. Oh, sorry, I must have missed that. So I suppose an issue you could see here is precedent. What is the precedent we want to set? Do we set a precedent by funding this? By funding, a program that we had concerns about funding last year because it was a recurring thing? And if we're not setting a precedent here, what's the differentiating metric? Is it that we're empowering people because CNET's empowered people and we turned them away because they were a recurring request? Is it, high rates of student satisfaction and student participation? I mean, we've turned away requests from student organizations for events that I'm sure also have very high rates of student satisfaction from their organization. So I am in support of this bill, but I would encourage you to think about potential drawbacks and try and address those. Because if we don't discuss the drawbacks here, they'll never be discussed. And this is our only chance to do it. So with that, I'll yield.
Senator Class.
Hi. I really appreciated the statistics earlier. But do you have any information about how many students? So there was only 10 reactive tests out of the 236. So I was wondering if you had any information about how many students used this as an opportunity because they thought they had symptoms, or if it was like, oh, this is happening why not? Kind of to phrase it that way.
Data.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say most of the students are coming. So I guess it's kind of a two-part question. So when they call to schedule an appointment, if they currently had if they had symptoms, they work to get them into Thielen much faster. They didn't have them wait until the thing. So part of this data, you have to look at it with the lens of that. The students that called in that said, because one of the questions that the front desk staff is asking is if they currently have symptoms. If they said yes to that, they work to get them in sooner, not to wait potentially upwards of a month or something out, depending on what it was to be able to get that. So that what you're seeing on the slide right now is the data for the students, like when they did come in for the testing, how many said that they had current symptoms. I would say, to answer your question, most of the students probably were taking the opportunity to find out. We do know that a lot of the students were engaging in some risk behaviors that would make sense for why they would come in. So like, did you have sex without a condom in the last 12 months? 168 out of the 228 that have responded to that had said yes. So a lot of the students are coming that were engaging potentially in some riskier behaviors that wanted to get testing, so they may not have had symptoms. The other important thing to consider too is, particularly with STD testing, that a lot of, particularly with chlamydia and others, that they can be asymptomatic. A lot of people don't have symptoms, but can still have it. So it's important to also have opportunities for people that even if they don't have symptoms, that they can still get the testing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I yield the remaining amount of my time to Finance Director Wheeler.
I do have a quick question first. When people call and they say, hi, I want an STD test, did you say, oh, by the way, we have a free option for you? Or was this, hey, we have a free test, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'll take it? How did that work?
In the promotional materials that we put out, we had students, like, when they were instructed when they call in to talk about the GYT program. But if students had called normally, just like if they didn't know about it or aware of it, and they talked about STD testing, they had asked about the symptoms, and if they didn't, they had said that, hey, there's an upcoming outreach program. Are you interested in that?
Okay.
To my knowledge or understanding,
So it's a little
that's
bit of
how it
both.
went. It's a little bit of both, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make some comments. I'm not voting, but I just want you to be aware. It's my understanding that the funding that was given, the $13,500 that was given to them, as far as I can see, we did not get any of that back. So I believe that they did spend all the money. It just was more expensive than they expected, is what I'm assuming. So the 236 tests were $13,500. So I'm a little bit nervous about funding something that we don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't actually know if this will be a full 400, if it'll be less than that, maybe more than that. The primary health care across the street, just up the street from CVS, is open every other Wednesday from 1 to 4 p.m., free confidential testing. We also fund confidential STD testing through Mary Greeley through Asset. So I feel like we are double funding it. Maybe you could see it that way. Also, there's an opportunity across the street that might actually be closer for a lot of students. Thielen gets a health fee every year. They fund free condoms. That's a great thing that we have on campus. We get a student activity fee. I don't know if we want to move fees from student activity fee to health fee. This is kind of moving student fees across platforms. That's one argument. And just because we have the money does not mean we should spend it. Those are my 6 cents.
I do have one. Can I share just a quick comment? For one thing, so the condoms that are on campus, all safer sex items, those actually come for free from the Iowa Department of Public Health. So it's part of a grant system. So we actually don't use any funding from Iowa State or student dollars to pay for that. That's coming from a partnership we have with Iowa Department of Public Health, where we get those to make them available for students. Just wanted to clarify that point. Yeah. And then,
just a quick note that there's 10 minutes left on this bill. There's been a motion to extend the debate by 10 minutes, and there's been an objection. Thank you. Senator Han Young.
So, first of all, Vice Speaker Schrader, are you able to send the PowerPoint about Get Yourself Tested to us after the meeting ends?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And not to, about extending the debate, I believe that a lot of us are beginning to formulate our opinions about this bill, so I think that to refrain from repeating points that other senators have made would help us, because I think a lot of us are starting to get those opinions. I would just like to say that I agree that getting new people into Thielen is very important, especially in a year where Title X funding has been reduced. It would be good for student government to support these sort of initiatives. That's all I have, so I'll yield.
Senator Alucard.
Just to sort of piggyback on what sounds like the collective room is saying, you know, funding this bill, we do set a precedent that students' health and wellness is important to student government, period. There's not really a debate. If we fund this, we're saying this is something that matters to us, whether we have opinions about whether STD testing is right or wrong, it doesn't matter. We're just saying that access to health and wellness is important. And so I definitely think that because they are looking to seek out sustainable resources, it's really important to say, yes, right now they want us to fund it, but this might not be a forever thing, and they did bring the cost down for the entire year because, again, if you divide it by 2 semesters and then spreading it out throughout the year. As an MPH student, for those of you who don't know, it's a Master's of Public Health. Public health is about increasing successful intervention techniques in order to address incidence and prevalence of diseases in order to go forward and be responsible, you know, advocates for health and wellness, along with taking care of the environment and those around you. And so this is definitely something that if we look at how they're trying to sustain it, their values, their goals in this process, it's very well laid out. My last comment is just, you know, behaviors of increased risk are not something that we're in control over. And so what we are in control over is expanding access to care, especially for people of color, along with gender, romantic, and sexual minorities. And I think that that's really important, regardless of where you stand on that. And so I am in very much support of this bill, and for that, I yield.
Senator Fritz.
I guess the issue that I have with this bill is that this is coming from student activity fees. And so I think that because people already are paying that health fee to use Thielen, I don't think it's fair that kind of the student activity fee is subsidizing this. Additionally, for students that do purchase this health insurance plan, I do think that that would kind of undermine that plan in having that, just because for the people that pay that, they don't have to pay this then. So for their student activity fee to have to kind of go to an STD test that they could already get under their insurance, I just don't know if I see that as being fair. I yield.
Senator Ludwig.
Hi, I just had a couple things. First, just a quick question. I might have missed this, but I was just wondering, do you have any numbers on how many students said that they were only able to access this kind of resource because of this program?
I don't think we asked that question to be able to answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that because I just thought that would be informative because we have been talking about whether or not this actually expands access to these resources. I'd also like to kind of comment on the bill itself. I don't think this, us talking about this bill is talking about whether or not we support STD testing. I think this is about whether or not we should fund it. And I personally have concerns about, as Senator Fritz said, kind of using our fee to subsidize the wellness fee. And I will personally be voting against it. But I just think we should keep in mind that we don't want to be kind of shifting fees from, you know, student activities to wellness, because I think it just sets a bad precedent. So I yield.
Just want to make a note, there's 5 minutes left on the bill. Senator Zastrow.
Permission to address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
Would funding from student government restrict your ability to apply for and secure grants for this program in the future?
For the specific partnership we're looking at with the community-based screening services, it would not. It doesn't have any connection to my knowledge of that. So, yeah.
Thank you. I yield.
Senator Alucard.
Just to address the ISU ship insurance idea, so the ISU ship insurance is something that you as a student yourself can pay for, or your parents can. So that's not something that just because it covers it that they wouldn't be able to see it, or that would still affect what you're trying to get accomplished by seeking care for testing. And so it's also something that isn't free with insurance. Like my insurance with ISU SHIP was almost 25 to 30 of my total financial aid this semester. And so it definitely is a significant cost. And so yes, students might be paying for that themselves or their parents might be, but there's also a way to, have a monthly cost associated instead. So it's not free with insurance because the insurance itself isn't free. And I definitely want to end with, precedent can be broken. There's no reason that, we can sit here and go, oh, well, it's always been, no, it doesn't have to always be like that. We can set a precedent. Things have changed, especially a facility so close, losing Title X funding. It is really important to consider that things are changing, and so maybe this is just time for us to adapt and move forward with this.
I'll keep this quick. We all know how we're going to vote, but I want to address the double fee argument before I call the question. I'll draw a parallel between, the MU and Panda, right? The MU has a contract with Panda Express where they pay for, Panda Express to be in the MU. But you still have to pay for Panda when you go there to eat, even though you pay $39.55 to the MU for upkeep for this building. So by that token, why should you not have to pay at a heavily discounted rate, might I add, for a supplemental service, even though you already pay a student health fee? And with that, I'll call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Senator Alcard, Bender, Blair, Hahn, Culbertson, Dowlinger, Fritz, Green, Hanyang, Beasley, Johnson, Kraft, Klein, Lifford, Ludwig, Knapp, Meredith, Mitchell, Rice, Rincey, Rolling, Shimano, Schrader, Charles, Stanley, Samuel, Tonet, Zastra. With a vote of 23 to 2 to 3, this voting request passes.
Quorum.
There's been a quorum call. Basically, that I'm going to go ahead and read the senator names out. You just got to mark present to say present here. Those are the only two that accepted.
Senator Vick. Alcard.
Yes.
Bender. Here. Blair. Hahn.
Colton, Dollinger, Fritz, Green, Hanyang, Beasley, Johnson, Klass, Klein, Lifford, Ludwig, Mass, Meredith, Mitchell, Rice, Rincey, Rolling, Shimano, Schrader, Charles, Stanley,
Samuel. Tonet. Zastra.
Here.
We have quorum.
Point of information. When you're talking into microphones, please hold it up so that members of the stream are able to hear you. There's a comment on the stream currently that says people are not able to hear people who are making points. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hanyang, for bringing that up. Moving on to 2019-2-11F, St. Jude up till Don line item transfer, and that will be the Senator Lifford.
So this is just a line item transfer that's over the $1,500 threshold that Finance Committee and the Finance Director can have to just push these through, so we need Senate's approval. So, any questions?
Questions for Senator Lifford? There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections?
There's been a call to question. There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Alcard. Bender. Blair. Khan. Culbertson. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Johnson. Klass. Klein. Lifford. Ludwig. Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Strader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonet. Zastrow. Meredith. 26 to 0 to 1. 0 to 1. With a vote of 26 to 0 to 0, 26 to 0 to 1, this line item transfer bill passes. Moving on to internal matters, within internal matters special orders 2019-2-13 SG, seating at-large members to Finance Committee with Speaker Culbertson. You have to make an amendment
Oh. Okay.
with the names.
Oh, yeah. I move to amend, to fill in the blanks, Kristen Hoffman, Natalie Voss, Max Rule, and Thomas, Tiggs. I apologize if I messed up any of your names.
There's been a motion to amend the bill and add the nominees' names, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into discussion of the amendment. There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been, is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Speaker Culbertson.
Hi, everybody. If you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, why you want to be on Finance Committee and all that good stuff, we'd love to hear it.
Hi, so I'm Tom Tigges. I'm a senior here. I get to be super senior for about a semester. Not because of grades, but I changed majors. I want to be on Finance Committee, just really get me involved in the community at Iowa State for this last year. Being more involved, get some great experience within my field. And I don't know, everyone in the committee seems so far, so hopefully I'll make some friends in that as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Hoffman. I am a junior majoring in agricultural business. The reason I am wanting to be on the Finance Committee is because I really want to help make an impact here at Iowa State University. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Max Ruley. I am a sophomore majoring in statistics. I really wanted to join Finance Committee because I wanted to get involved more on campus because I was not as involved last year. I wanted to get involved with student government because there is great community involved in, and I want to see what future networking or future endeavors it has in for me. So that's why.
Hi, I'm Natalie Voss, and I'm a sophomore majoring in accounting. I wanted to join Finance Committee to get more involved in the Iowa State community and to meet new people.
Senator Rinchi.
Hi, thank you all for coming in. So for those of you who are saying that this is a good chance to get more involved, this is generally something that takes a lot of time. Can you tell us a little bit about your time management skills and whether you see yourself being able to commit to this job?
Yeah, so I have nothing to do on Tuesdays from 4:15 to 6:15 every single week. Therefore, all of my time can be committed to this. Also, I have nothing to do except for the February Career Fair, which is a big allocation week for the Finance Committee. And then my birthday's in February too. So other than that, my time commitment would be to this. I'd have no issues or problems doing that. And I don't know, I have good time management otherwise.
So I have very great time management skills. I'm a very organized person. I can't tell you how many sticky notes I have telling me of what needs to be done on certain days. I'm also free from 4:15 to 6:15 on Tuesdays, so I'm excited to give my time to the Finance Committee and do what I can do to help.
I wanted to, I personally wanted to simply add something to my schedule as I feel like I had spent too many hours just doing nothing in my day. Like the Tuesday for just 2 hours a week was a great way to just at least ease myself into it, and that's kind of my state on it.
So ever since I came to Iowa State, I've had a job on campus at Seasons. And I'm also in Collegiate Women in Business, and both of those things do take a lot of time, but being involved in them has taught me to have really good time management skills to give myself the ability to contribute to the Finance Committee.
And then further, what's a goal you have for this year on Finance Committee?
A goal I have this year for Finance Committee is just kind of generally seeing the impacts on the decisions that we have. So helping create a positive impact on the students around us and the decisions that we make. Like today, the bill that you guys just voted on with, I guess not the line item, but get yourself tested. That's hopefully that'll make a positive impact. The data said that it would. So that's something that we get to look at and decide whether we can fund it or not. So that's kind of a goal that I'd like to have.
Honestly, Thomas couldn't have said it any better. I completely agree with everything he said. I want to be able to help watch the impact that I make, so yeah.
I second both their opinions. I really don't have much else on that to say, but that's it.
In Finance Committee, it's a goal of mine to understand more about how student government works and to see where all of our different fees go. Even in our first meeting yesterday, I gained a lot of knowledge about where our different fees go and yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate where you're standing. Thank you.
Senator Yield. Senator Hanyang. Oh, Senator Stanley.
Great. Hello, all of you. Great to see that you want to be involved. Finance is a very difficult committee. I don't envy your task. One of you just mentioned the student fee, so we can start off with that. What's your opinion on the student fee that we currently pay?
So my opinion on the student fee is that I don't have a choice in whether I pay it or not, so there's no point in having an opinion on the student fee.
Do you think it's too high, too low? That's what I meant.
Yesterday at the meeting, I actually saw a breakdown of the fees that we had, and I have not spent enough time with that document to really have an opinion on it. I would say anything that I pay is too much, especially if the services are underutilized by that student. I don't know. So.
So again, unfortunately, I say ditto to that. The student fees I do see an importance in them. I understand why we pay them. I also don't understand why everything's so high, but a cost of living must be needed, I guess. We have not spent enough time here in Finance Committee to completely understand everything and see how it's put forth, but I'm looking forward to seeing how we can make an impact here at Iowa State.
I would say I have no opinion right now. I'd love to get to know more about why we're paying certain stuff. That's one of the reasons also why I joined Finance Committee. So don't have an opinion on that right now.
Just like the other members of the committee said, I'm not sure I know enough information right now. I haven't spent enough time in the Finance Committee to really make a comment about whether or not I think the student activity fee is too high or too low.
That's totally fine. I mean, I didn't learn much about the student fees until I was on the fee committee. So my second and last question will be, if a group came to you and wanted funding for an event that they were really excited about, but they couldn't get it because of PNC or one of our other governing documents, what would you do? Would you help them? How would you help them?
So the question is that, if a group came to me and they didn't fit the PNC,
Yes.
what would I do? If it was just, I don't know, minor technicalities that could be worked out to get it to fit PNC, maybe that could be worked out and the approval of funding could work. If it could not fit PNC in any way, I'd have to say no to that group.
Thomas hit the technicalities right on the dot. If they don't fit PNC, from my understanding, they cannot be funded. And if we can help them fit PNC, then I would do anything that I can to help them get there so that we can fund them.
I will say the same both. Also, I would be open to at least hearing their viewpoint on what they would want the funding for, and maybe look into the process of seeing if it's a possibility of being added to PNC or if there's a reason for why it's set as not.
I would educate them on the different requirements of PNC and help them to maybe see if they could in the future fit the requirements of PNC, and if not, they wouldn't get funding.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for your answers. I will yield.
President Graber.
So I was on Finance Committee for the past 2 years, not this year. So I just want to welcome you all, if you get nominated, obviously. I hope you will. But Max, I was actually Max's CA last year. He's awesome. He was our treasurer for our floor, and he also works at the campus org accounting, so he's got that institutional knowledge. So I would love to call the question for you all. I can't do that, but that's just my 2 cents, so welcome.
President, do you yield? Senator Hanyang. There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, and there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the nominees by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations. Moving on to 2019-2-16 SG, seating at largest to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Rowling.
Hi, everybody. So I will be speaking on behalf of Elissa tonight. She can't be here due to a prior commitment that she has on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. So we did not expect her to try to change those commitments for us. So I will be reading a brief snippet that she prepared for me to speak. So she said, "My name is Elissa Mulcairn, and I am currently a junior majoring in animal science. I am actively involved in my sorority, Sigma Kappa, and serve as the assistant to philanthropic services. Also, I am a connection group leader for the Salt Company. When searching for a campus organization to join, I was searching for one that had the greatest impact on students at Iowa State. I wanted to be involved within those changes and to be able to see the improvement I had taken a part in when walking around campus and seeing the joy it brings to my peers. When I was researching about student government, I knew this would be the group where I could voice my opinions and ideas and directly serve the student body in the Student Initiatives Committee. I would like to be on this committee to serve the students at Iowa State to the best of my abilities by improving convenience, the atmosphere, and the strategic aspects of our campus. A couple ideas I have voiced in a few of our first meetings was the addition of a program within the My State app that would locate where free available parking was around campus to help students limit parking citations they receive for trying to use on-campus resources. I also had the idea of adding more bike lanes or exploring trails around campus for fast-paced commuters riding bikes, skateboards, or scooters to limit the dangerous traffic on sidewalks and the unfortunate crashes into pedestrians. I'm excited to see what this organization can do this semester and how my role can help. Thank you for your attention, and hopefully in the near future I will get to meet you all in person. I can answer some questions if possible, but if there are any, please let me know.
Senator Ludwig.
I just want to say that that statement was pretty awesome, and I don't see anyone else's placards up, so I won't call the question.
There's been a call to question.
I'm sorry, I should have foreseen that.
There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the nominee by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations. Moving on to 2019-2-17 SC, seating at largest to the Green Initiatives Fund Committee with Senator Searles.
Move to table this bill for 1 week.
There's been a motion to table this bill to 1 week, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been tabled. Moving on to 2019-2-18 SC, confirming the Vice Commissioner for Election Commission with Speaker Culbertson.
Okay, hi everybody. We have our Vice Commissioner here with, or our nominee for Vice Commissioner. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit why you want to be on Election Commission, anything else you should know, and yeah.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Hans Mueller, he, him, his,
and I've been on election commission for about a year now and really enjoyed it. I'm a junior in industrial engineering here at Iowa State, and definitely something with getting more involved with. The reason why I want to kind of step up into a leadership role on election commission is because actually part of my major, industrial engineering, is looking for improvement everywhere we go. And I definitely think there's definitely room for improvement on our election process. And I'm really excited to be a part of that and I have some new ideas that I could be willing to tell you guys about in terms of sustainability for the future of our elections, making sure they're consistent from year to year. Because, a lot of us are only around here for 4 years, unless you want to take a victory lap because you chose engineering like me, or 2. Yeah, with that, if there's any questions.
Senator Ludwig.
Hi. I just wanted to let you talk about those initiatives that you said you had. So do you just want to talk through some of them?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I think the violation process is an area that we are looking to improve. And so the idea I have proposed is to create a document, and what this looks like is largely dependent upon what the rest of the commission, and really we would be welcoming feedback from Senate at large as well. Simply, I'll just use an example. If it was a simple Google Doc, this would have a number of benefits. It would first and foremost provide consistency. Last year, we had some inconsistency with our violation process, and if we had a document that we had beforehand that was shown to the candidates and the slates beforehand, and everybody saw it, everybody knew what the process was going to look like, this would be definitely very beneficial because there would be no questions regarding what would happen if you were in a violation hearing. Additionally, it would provide sustainability. As I touched on before, at max, you're probably not going to be here more than 5-6 years. So you want to leave some kind of a legacy, and I think it's important to have that consistency. With the election this year, we want it to be fairly consistent, obviously, with the election 10 years from now. That would be ideal. Of course, this document definitely allows for easy improvements, because I think often maybe we all come victim to this of, oh, that's a great idea, but it never really goes any further than that. If we have a document that's already laid out and we're using it every meeting, it's like, well, we can pencil in changes from week to week if we have issues. So it's kind of an iterative process as well to kind of create a process that's definitely more efficient and hopefully more transparent as well for the slates.
Thank you so much. Those were fantastic ideas, and I look forward to seeing them implemented. I yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, so the only reason that confirming the vice commissioner is coming up is because we changed the bylaws last year where the vice commissioner automatically becomes the commissioner if after the election code is passed, there's a vacancy. So our nominee here was already confirmed to the commission by Senate, and this is just a process to make sure that whoever becomes the election commissioner gets a fair proceeding, and we know, because maybe when we confirm someone to the commission, we're not quite comfortable for them to be chair of the whole commission. So with that, I'll call to question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the nominee by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations. Point of order. Senator. There's been a motion to add 2019-2-19SC at the bottom of special orders. So the reason, just give you all a heads up, is if you look at the bill, if you have the packet, the bill currently does not have any sponsors. So, which is why Senator Stanley had to move to change tonight's agenda to add this bill. So he's going to be the primary sponsor, and then the person who seconded it would be the second sponsor. Do y'all have any questions for that? All right, cool. So we'll move into a discussion. Since there's a change in tonight's agenda, there'll be a discussion with Senator Stanley. There's been a call to question. There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in changing tonight's agenda by the unanimous consent? Seeing none, bill has been added. Senator Stanley.
Okay, so this is the bill to see,
I'll start over. This is the bill to seat election commission members for our 2019-2020 election commission. So if the nominees could proceed to the lectern, tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you want to be on election commission.
Hi, I'm Will Stemler. I'm a junior in industrial engineering from Minnesota. I want to be on election commission just because ever since freshman year, I've wanted to get a little bit more involved here. I have been in intramurals and clubs and stuff, but I've never really been on something that kind of makes more of an impact here. So I figured give it a shot this year and see if I can make a positive impact.
Hello, my name is Jessie Buston. When I am a returning student and I'm a junior here at Iowa State studying both statistics and data science, when looking at opportunities to get involved, I wanted to make sure that I found a right fit for me. My time's valuable and I want to make sure that I bring something to the table to offer. The election commission for me fit into that because it was both a way that I could have a meaningful role in making sure that other students feel like their voices are heard and that people are aware of the ways that they can get involved and that their voice matters and that voting matters. That's something that will go on way past their time at Iowa State. The other reason is because I like policy and I like implementing policy and I like to make sure that procedures and rules will fit into that. So it makes me happy. It pleases the side of me that likes order. Thank you.
Questions? Senator Hanyang.
May I address the speakers?
Yes, you may.
Thank you for joining us tonight. A few questions for you. First of all, what do your time commitments look like in the election season around March?
Just have regular school. I'm always open on Thursdays from 6 to 7, so works for me.
Obviously, this is a time commitment weekly, but also it's cyclical, and I understand that. So I know that the commitment now is not going to be the same as it is in the spring. It kind of fits in timing for me. That's a time where things are not quite as crazy. You already decided what you're doing that summer. You already know what your research opportunities are. So the other thing is that as somebody who has balanced and handled many, many jobs and positions at the same time, as well as a household and a family, it's a lot easier to know in advance when those are coming and schedule and make time for it.
All right, and second question, talk a little bit about your kind of reliability and communication and how you would be able to talk about the election commission and that sort of stuff to people who have not necessarily gotten involved in student government or running for election.
I believe I have pretty good communication skills and planning skills. I was the president of a couple clubs in high school, service clubs, and I'm also an Eagle Scout, and I've led numerous groups of people. So I feel like I'm able to communicate those ideas well to others.
I think communication to other students and other members of the community about that comes from an honest appreciation for who you are and what you're doing. And if you truly believe in that, then that's something that you live day in and day out. So that communication comes not just during your classes and while you are wearing the whole role, have that hat on, but all the time. So reliability and making sure that you have clear communication and messaging coming from the Election Commission comes from truly believing in what it's doing.
All right, thank you. I yield.
Furthermore, Senator Zastrow. There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections to calling to question? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote, and then there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the nominee by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations. Moving on to general orders. Within general orders 2019-2-21SO, adopting revising student government priorities for asset funding. That would be with Senator Ludwig.
Awesome. So Lucy talked to us about this last week, how the asset board felt that one of our priorities that we had set forth were confusing, and so they were looking for a clarification or change to our priorities. I am a asset volunteer, so I decided to kind of take the lead on this issue. I spent some time over the last week looking at this green booklet here, it has a list of all the services that asset supports. And after looking through it, looking at the services that we had, none of them clearly fit into that. It isn't the fifth one anymore because we removed it, but the former fifth priority, none of them fit clearly into it. So I just made the decision to remove it. I feel that all the other criteria support the kinds of people that former criteria was kind of intended to support. So I don't think we're like losing out on a chance to support any particular group or support any particular service. Yeah, Lucy, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Jacob did a great job. If you guys
Then-
have any questions, just ask.
Yep. With that, I yield.
Senator Stanley.
Senator Ludwig, could you highlight the changes that this makes to the priorities that we approved at the end of last term?
Yeah, so basically, sorry, let me pull up the document quick. I do apologize. I meant to have this open. Just a moment. So the priority that was removed read as follows: programs that empower traditionally discriminated against peoples. So we removed that because it had been confusing to the asset board. But as I stated, looking at the services that asset provides, none of them really clearly fall into that category. And so effectively, there's no real change in what we're funding or what we are able to fund or what we are telling asset we're willing to fund. It's just that if you look at the other priority listed on there, it says child services, services providing aid to victims of sexual assault. They're listing specific services, which is a lot more understandable for the asset board. The fifth one, programs that empower traditionally discriminated against peoples, was vague, and there really isn't a program that's kind of for that. So yeah, it doesn't really change anything in effect, but that is what we removed.
So while I understand that, your statement that assets programs perhaps don't fall under that category, it seems like there wasn't even an attempt to keep the spirit of that provision in there. Could you speak a little more on why that is?
Lucy seems to, you might want to, Lucy, if you have an answer.
Okay. No, so that is kind of why we're bringing it back. I said last week that we were going to do something and then bring it back to you guys. Looking at it, going through, there's a list of asset programs, individual agencies and the programs they provide. We went through that, and there's honestly no program that we saw that really fit the exact intent of that. And like I said last week, I didn't get any feedback from you guys. I didn't receive any emails or anything from anyone. So the best thing I thought I could do was just to delete it and then bring it back. And Jacob agreed with this. After looking at the programs, kind of delete that line, bring it back to you guys. Again, this is open kind of for debate. So if you guys have something you want to add or ideas, this is the time to do that. But from what we saw, there was no particular program that fit the intent of that as we read it and as I talked about last week.
And can I add to that real quick? Yeah, and although I do want to state that we're not saying that the intent of that priority was bad or trying to say that we shouldn't support those things. But kind of despite the spirit of that priority being in good intention, it isn't helpful to the asset board. And these priorities are supposed to be listed so that the asset board knows what we're willing to fund. And so it's just kind of important that we stick to kind of the services that they can provide. So, I yield.
Senator Blair.
I think that perhaps the very fact that there are no programs that fit under this umbrella means that we're not doing a good enough job finding programs that fit under this umbrella. Let me finish, please. I think it's very important that we have a specific goal that we want to empower these groups of people. I think it's very clear what its intention is, that we want to, if there's a program that helps, traditionally disadvantaged group, a marginalized group, an oppressed group, whatever you want to call it, that we take that into consideration. I think it's very clear what it's trying to say, and I think to remove it is kind of going against what we should be doing as a group, as student government.
Do you want me to respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing that we should pursue that and try and find those programs, but the fact is that Asset does not provide programs that are specific to that criteria, to the spirit of that criteria. And so we give money to Asset every year, and we fund these charity organizations through them. And so although I agree that we should, that I wish there was a program and that we should look to find a program, through Asset currently there is no avenue through which we can do that, a program that specifically addresses traditionally discriminated against peoples. And I also believe that the other 5 criteria do support those groups.
Yeah, I would just say that if we remove this priority, then we certainly won't be finding organizations to fund or, and I don't agree. This is very specific. Childcare services, sexual assault, STD prevention, substance abuse, legal services, does not include perhaps organization that specifically funds LGBT homeless. I don't know, just that's something, that's a traditionally marginalized group that has a very specific need. A large percentage of homeless youth are LGBT. So like, I think it's very important that we have a specific goal to help marginalized groups, and I think removing that is not something we should even be thinking about doing.
Yeah. Oh, if would you?
Yeah, go for it.
Lucy.
No, I absolutely agree that it's a really important goal. And the reason this came up, the priorities are used sort of specifically because when it comes down to cutting funding, we have to kind of look at a list of the types of programs, because obviously we're going to try to give as much money as possible, but we're going to come down to this or that in a lot of ways. And so this all came about because Asset is restructuring or in the process of restructuring the way priorities are done across all 5 funders. And so I just thought it was really important in order for student government's interests to be best represented to have very specific priorities. However, we could always put something in this bill that says, we have overarching interest in programs that have, or we want these programs to better help traditionally discriminated against peoples. It's more the fact that it was a specific priority, and I can send out the list of the funding recommendations. For example, I know that, I just want to look at it real quick. I can't find it exactly right here, but so Access, for example, some of their programs do specifically help individual types of groups, but they're not limited to that, if that makes sense. It's more just for the sake of funding the individual programs easier and just clarity. And now that's why I said last week that if there was an idea of a specific type of program that did that, for example, LGBT youth, that would be great. And if
I just think
we
that
could look into that.
I think that it's important that it is vague in a way, that it allows the Asset Board to say Iowa State supports funding programs that support this group. So if we were to make it very specific, it wouldn't be as useful, in my opinion. Right? So if a program was brought to you and there was nothing in Iowa State that said that we support these groups, then if we decided we were going to list out LGBT people, people of color, people who speak English as a second language, if we went through a list, we would have 40 different bullet points, and this condenses it into one.
Yeah, no, and I think definitely I can send you the list of all the programs that the Asset program does fund. So Iowa State funds a specific set of the agencies overall. And then so there's actually a specific list of the agency and all the programs that they provide the Asset funds. And so if you would want to go through that and see if there's any programs that you think align with that, I agree that there are possible benefits to keeping it vague, but it was very confusing to the Asset Board when they're restructuring and due to the
30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So I guess what I would just say is I think instead of deleting this line, we should go back to Asset and clarify and say this point was meant to ensure that we are taking into account whether this program, the program that we're considering funding, is affecting, promoting, whatever you want to say, empowering these marginalized groups. I don't think the solution is to delete it, and I would really oppose that. I yield, I guess.
Senator Zastro.
Okay, so important to remember that nobody sent any emails, so no changes were proposed. Also, I would argue that legal services are important, and what I'm debated with in my head and discussed, this is to the asset board as declared, but the difference would be in branding of these resources to the community. This isn't the bill that brands the resources to a community. We can always promote those as resources. The people that, we struck line 5 as minoritized groups. I don't remember the exact wording, but those groups can use all of these services. So by now saying we also want to support legal services, that's just an extra resource that can then later on be branded to the appropriate groups. I don't think that it necessarily means we're not supporting that. And that's kind of my standpoint. This is showing the board what we support. How we show that to the community is not coming from this list of priorities, right? Is that the correct assumption? This is for the board to use moving forward. Can Lucy speak to that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So it's important so if we were to go back, we would not include that legal services line in that, which is taking away a service that we would prioritize to the groups that may need it. So, I yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
All right, I got an idea to help clarify this for everybody. So we can't have it in the bullet point list because that's for specifics, but we would maybe, some of us, I'm guessing, would like to have it as a general statement. So I move to amend to say ISU student government supports community services that benefit historically disadvantaged groups and marginalized identities. And I'm gonna write that.
There's been a motion to amend the bill with, I'm gonna wait for the amendment to pop up.
Sorry.
There's been a motion to amend the bill with the stated amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into the discussion of the amendment. Vice Speaker Schrader.
Okay, I'm gonna yield, but just remember, so now we can only talk about this specific line. I yield.
There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? There's been an objection. Do you take it back?
I withdraw.
All right. Senator Stanley.
Senator Ludwig, what would be, in your opinion, the impact of this line on the asset board's thought process?
I would have you refer to that to Lucy. She's a little bit more familiar with how they think through these things.
I shall do that then.
Yeah, so if you look at the other funding organizations, a lot of them do kind of have like more general statements, then followed by like more specific, like actual like the services. And so, for example, pretty sure Story County has something just generally related to like food security, and then they have like more specific like ideas or benchmarks. And so the primary thing would be that like when I'm going through and when the team is going through making funding recommendations, you know, 2 childcare services, one v the other, we'll go with the one that benefits the historically disadvantaged group first. I think that would be like a fair way to do it. So you know, there can kind of be more general statements about overarching goals, and then when it comes down to 2 childcare services or like 2 services providing aid, that would be the main thing. Although I don't think it would have a huge, like, it wouldn't have a huge impact on the board. It would have an impact on how Iowa State makes funding recommendations and how other funding organizations make recommendations for Iowa State.
So while that is certainly a step in the right direction, is it either of your opinion that this would compel the asset board to perhaps innovate programs that would serve these communities?
So just to kind of clarify, the asset board isn't a nonprofit that provides services. All of the services that the asset board funds are individual nonprofits. For example, Access, NAMI, YSS. So that would be an issue with the individual nonprofits, many of which do have programs or do have specific institution goals of serving these types of populations. like I went to a YSS board meeting on Tuesday, and they talked a lot about the most disadvantaged groups and like how they focus on them. So that's not really a question for like, that's not really a thing that Asset would change the way that they do things because we contract services from nonprofits in the area. So that's an issue. If that were to be an issue, I don't personally think it is based on what I've seen from these nonprofits and based on the people who've come and spoke to the Asset Board. But that would be an issue with individual nonprofits in the area, not really something the Asset can do anything about.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Senator Oliver.
So Senator Blair, I definitely empathize words hard with the fact that there aren't any groups listed within the Story County Asset team. I'm pulling up the directory right now. So I have a compromise that I think might accomplish what you are looking for to also be inclusive, specifically of those individuals within the LGBTQIA community. And so I would like to potentially include and marginalized identities, including gender, romantic, and sexual minorities as the end of that sentence. Not saying, especially not saying exclusively, but just to draw attention to the fact that even though it's not listed as one of those priorities, it's still something we're focused on and willing to support. Would that be something that you would?
Senator, do you propose an amendment?
Aren't we discussing the current amendment?
Yeah, so
Do I have to propose an amendment?
if you have to, that's going to be an amendment to an amendment.
Sorry, I propose an amendment to the amendment to end that sentence with marginalized identities, comma, including gender, romantic, and sexual minorities.
There's been a motion to amend the amendment with the proposed amendment. A lot of amendments. Is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections? There's been an objection. Do you withdraw your amendment, Senator?
No.
We move into the discussion of why we would not pass the amendment to the amendment. Senator Zastro.
Yeah, so this is the point that This is the point that Senator Blair was making earlier. I think if we list one specific minority group or three, I guess I'm not sure how that's categorized, then that emphasizes that the student government is attempting to give special focus to those specific minorities. I think it would be best if that discretion was left to the Asset Board, and if we just left it to traditionally discriminated against groups. And yeah, Treasurer.
If it helps, just for everyone's clarification, so this is revisited every year. And so me, as the sitting treasurer right now, hearing what you guys kind of want from this, then I can like implement that. So the Asset Board, generally, we're kind of using that term pretty loosely. Like the Asset Board is basically just a group of the admins from the funders. So like me, and then there's an individual from like City of Ames, Story County United Way, and then a whole bunch of volunteers. We basically all just get together in a room and like make recommendations based on like requested funding, funding from last year, and then we look at our priorities to make sure that everyone's funding kind of in line with their priorities, and if anything needs cut, or things need reduced, or it's this versus that, we kind of like have a guideline. So, you know, if the concern is that we're gonna be like listing very specific identities, you know, I personally think like all identities are equal. Like we need to make sure that we're, you know, all traditionally disadvantaged groups, and that is a big population. But me as a sitting treasurer, I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing that's what you want. And so if that helps some conversation or some clarification, this will be revisited every year. So next year, and actually I think maybe in the spring, this will come back to you guys and you can kind of look at it, and then also the next Senate will see it, and the next. So this won't be the only version of this, and also it's just important that like the sitting treasurer and the sitting volunteers kind of know the intention behind it. Make sense?
Yeah, so I would just end by saying I think it's good that we have the first level amendment saying that we care about the marginalized communities, because I think that's something that future student senates can look back on and understand the general intent. I don't think we need to include anything more specific than that in federal.
To just comment on that, if you go through the directory of
I didn't call you on, so you can't really speak out of motion.
I thought he was in response to, I apologize.
He didn't ask you a question. Senator Alucard.
So if you go through the directory of asset organizations that are associated, there are actually groups that serve underprivileged groups currently, whether that's mental disabilities or physical disabilities. There's HERDA, which does door-to-door transportation. There's a couple others. So I think that my purpose was to not only, address Senator Blair's concerns, but then also say, yes, we do have groups within asset that are, fitting that previously now deleted line of traditionally, what was it? I'm sorry. Underrepresented groups. And so if Senator Blair, you don't think that this would be helpful, I'm willing to withdraw my amendment, but can you respond?
Did you ask a question?
Can you respond?
Senator Blair.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but I think that what is that last line? Marginalized identities kind of does include those last three. So maybe it's kind of implied. I don't know
Okay. Then I'm willing to withdraw my amendment.
Thank you. We move back to the general amendment. There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, there's been a call for unanimous consent on the amendment. She withdrew the amendment, so now we're back on the amendment. I just want to take a moment, soak this in. We had an amendment to an amendment. She withdrew her amendment, so we'll be back on the amendment. Does it make sense to everyone? Senator. Thank you. Thank you. There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Was it Vice Speaker Schrader?
I yield.
Further motions on the bill as a whole. There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. There's been a call for unanimous consent. It's a Senate order. You can do unanimous consent on Senate orders. Okay. There's been an objection. Would you withdraw? All right, we'll move into a roll call vote. Senator Alicard. Bender. Blair. Khan. Culbertson. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Lipford. Ludwig. Mass.
Abstain.
Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Simanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonet. Zastro. Because he's not in the quorum. With a vote of 26-0 this Senate order passes. Alicard. It's been a quorum call, so present or here. Alicard. Bender. Blair. Khan. Culbertson. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Lipford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Simanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonet. Zastro. All right, we do have quorum. Moving on to within general orders 2019-2-22 charging rules committee with the creation of court reform bills with Vice Speaker Schrader.
All right, so this is the bill that says all of the recommendations from the summer court working group, and charges Rules Committee with creating a bylaw bill and a constitutional change bill in accordance with that recommendation. So the hope is, since every single recommendation is listed out, we can have our full debate today, or not, sorry, we'll have the full debate when we discuss this bill. And if you have a disagreement with a line, if you want to amend something, if you don't agree with the recommendation, you can make amendments onto this bill, and Rules Committee would change the bylaws in accordance with that, so that we don't actually write a 50-page bylaw bill and then vote it down with 2 weeks before the deadline, and then we can't actually write anything. So I would like, when we discuss this bill, to have our full debate, to come prepared, and to really let your opinions be heard. We can do stuff later when the full bill comes up, but really at that point, it's going to be a little too late to make massive changes. So with that, I guess we have two options. We went a little quicker than I thought today, so we can do this today if you would like to, and we can debate it. 3 weeks ago, you got the PowerPoint. Some of you were at the working group session where we explained all of this. So we have had plenty of time to review. Nothing in this bill is new. We can do it today if you want to while we have the time. Next week's meeting might be a little longer. Or I'm going to eventually make a motion to table this for 1 week. Since normally we have first read on bills, since this is an important bill, I'm comfortable waiting another week so you all have a chance to review it in the bill form. So if you want to do it today, just object to my motion, and then we'll go into a discussion on if we should debate it. And honestly, please don't make that take forever if you do that. I imagine that'll be the biggest waste of time, having a debate on if we should have a debate today. So if you object, please just call to question right away on that one. So, well, first of all, yeah, well, that's fine. Just ask me afterwards if you have any questions on the process. With that, I'm going to move to table this bill for 1 week.
Second.
There's been a motion to table this week to next week, table this bill to next week, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Yeah. There's been an objection. Do you withdraw?
No.
Now we move into a discussion of, and there's been a call to question on, the motion is whole, right? And are there any objections?
So point of information, we now move into a vote where yes means we'll see it next week and no means we'll do it this week.
You heard it right from the Vice Speaker. Right, so yes means we table it to next week, and no means we debate it right now. Does it make sense? Awesome. A la carte. I don't even know. Bender. Yes. Blair. Yes. Khan. Yes. Culbertson. Yes. Darlinger. Yes. Fritz. Yes. Green. Hanyang. Yes. Heasley. Johnson. Yes. Class. Yes. Klein. Yes. Klein. Yes. Lipford. Yes. Ludwig. No. Mass. Yes. Meredith. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Rice. Yes. Rinchi. Yes. Rolling. Yes. Samanu. Yes. Schrader. Yes. Searles. Yes. Stanley. Yes. Samuel. Tonette. Yes. Zastro. Yes. Green. Yes. 27 to 1 to 0. With a vote of 27 to 1 to 0, we'll see this bill next week. All right, moving on to new business. Within new business, we have 2019-2-20Y, adding non-voting members of Election Commission.
Title. So,
Vice Speaker Schrader.
yeah, so this bylaw change was a request from our election commissioner who would like to have non-voting members to expand the commission a bit since it's a large time commitment. She's had people that are interested in staying on the commission, but maybe doing less of an active role. So this would just create folks who are on the commission, they can't vote. And if there's quorum issues, they can be elevated by the commissioner into a voting role so that when there's like violation hearings that are really last minute and you really need a quorum really quickly, they can be elevated, try and give election commissions some more flexibility. So we'll see you next week.
Questions of intent? We'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-12F, funding CNETs by Senator Lifford.
Title. So this is a CNET's dance team asking for funding. There is a note that they did not come to annual allocations. We'll see this in Finance Committee and discuss. Any
Questions of intent? We'll see this one next week. So, moving on to 2019-2-13F, funding Crew Club with Senator Lifford.
Title. All right, so this is Crew Club. They're a rowing team here. They're asking for some funds to repair their boat. See this Finance Committee.
Questions of intent? We'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-14F, funding Gaming and Esports Club with Senator Lifford.
Title. Again, Gaming Club. We'll see in Finance Committee.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-15F, funding genre with Senator Lifford.
Title. All right, so this one's genre. They're a publication that goes around campus. So
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-16F, funding student government office supplies with Senator Ludwig.
Title. Yeah, so this is just a bill, it's in the title. We're funding supplies for the student government office, so yeah, Finance Committee should see it soon, so. That's it.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to last bill, 2019-2-17F, funding student government tablecloth.
Title? Yeah, so like it's just a tablecloth, y'all. Yeah, for like tabling events and look more professional, so.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Closing announcements. President Graber.
Good job tonight. Just as a FYI, I saw some abstentions tonight. When you abstain, please only abstain if you are out of the room and you come in, or if you come late, like Senator Mass came. Not calling you out. You had a test. You're fine. Or if your name is on the bill and you don't want to, it's a conflict of interest. That's the only reason you should be abstaining. Just as a heads up.
Chief of Staff Kuzel. Take it away.
Okay, hello. Shameless plug, tomorrow is our second leadership breakout, so y'all should come if you want to, and if you're free, it's at 5. We had our first one last week, and it was so much fun, actually, just to like sit and have some cool conversations with people. I think the ones that were there would agree that we got to learn some more about each other. Like, I mean, for example, Kelsey was there, and then Deep was there, so people that I've kind of known, but I still learned some new and cool things because we got to share some stories. So I'm glad that it fostered that type of environment. So definitely encourage coming, get to know your fellow senators and student government members. If you have any questions, let me or Alex know, but I hope to see y'all there.
Senator Searles.
Okay, just wanted to remind everyone, this is the last week for the Hurricane Dorian relief effort donations that we heard about a couple weeks ago. We should have the information for that, where to donate. It's until the 27th, so get those donations in. And then if you have any recycling, I forgot to bring the bin, but just bring me what you want recycled after this, and I'll take it for you. So thanks.
Senator Zastro. Mike.
Hey y'all. So if you guys would like to be a part of those programs, there was Campus Connect, where they're looking for ambassadors to essentially act as student health ambassadors to the greater student bodies of public. I would like you guys to consider engaging with those programs so that you can help the people around you through the resources given by Student Health and Wellness. I yield.
Senator Hanyang.
Per Senator Blair's recommendations on accessibility, I spoke with Casey Degg, the technology manager at the Memorial Union, on Tuesday, which was yesterday, to discuss about having these microphones, our push-to-talk ones, go to the Campanile room so that we can all hear each other during debate, and so that we know when somebody's mic is off. Just saying, Mason, but sorry, I didn't mean to call you out, but it was just so recent. Just in case that it's really important for us to be heard to each other and then as well as on the stream, because when we're discussing bills that get more important and more applicative to students, that it's important that they hear those, especially if they're not in attendance with us. So if you have any recommendations about how we can better suit those, I know that on a lot of times that our other mics, the handheld ones over there, take a little bit of time to turn on. So if you have any recommendations about how we can make those better and save time and effort, just let me know. My email address is always open. Thank you.
Senator Green.
Hi, everybody. So the College Dems are having a caucus fair next Wednesday from 10 to 3 in the South Campanile lawn, like right out here. We're going to have the top 10 campaigns speak. So please come. Please share the word with all of your groups because it's really important. So yeah, hope to see you guys there. October 2nd from 10 to 3 in the South Campanile lawn.
Senator Dollinger.
Hi, if my mentees can find me after this, that'd be great. Thanks.
Senator Stanley.
All right, hey everyone, great debate. We did, even better than last week. I was very impressed. I do want to say though, it can be intimidating, definitely, to speak up against, viewpoints that other people are sharing. When the whole room is saying yes to a bill, it can be hard to speak up and say, I don't like this bill, or I have some criticisms of this bill. Just remember that your constituents elected you for your judgment, for your opinion, and I mean, you're doing them a disservice if you don't raise as many concerns and address as many concerns as you can. Also, we got into some very thorny Roberts Rules territory with the primary and secondary amendments there. So just reminder, everyone, brush up on your Roberts. I have a PDF that I'll send you, I'll email it to you. Read it all the way through if you can. We got the shout out to Speaker Culbertson, Vice Speaker Schrader especially for the placards. Yeah, just go read through Roberts. Everyone should read through Roberts at least once, I think. And finally, just remember to do your due diligence on the court reform bill. We've tabled it once. I would really not like to table it again if possible. You have a week. I've already read through this like 3 times, and I don't think I know enough about it to have a debate. So I will be giving this a very thorough treatment over the next week, and I encourage you all to do the same. Thank you.
Just a couple of announcements from me. If you plan to miss the Senate meeting, just make sure to email me the reason why you're going to be missing the Senate meeting. If you're going to be coming in late or if you're going to be leaving early, just helps me keep track of the people that will be leaving for attendance purposes. Second thing, if you have any programs or if someone's speaking, it's just out of respect that if you're working on a laptop, just shut the window down, just token of respect showing that you're listening to the people. Third thing, again, just a quick reminder, if you're having your placards up, I know these are new, so fresh out of the oven. So maybe just have it like in the way that I'd be able to see your name. I'm still learning. But yeah, and have a beautiful week. It's starting to get a little cold. Hopefully people don't get sick. Get your flu shots. So Thielen is setting up that. So make sure to do that and take care of yourself. It's gonna get, with midterm weeks coming pretty soon out here, it's gonna get really, really feisty in terms of your attitude towards things. So just make sure to take care of yourself and prioritize sleep, for sure. Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, and I think our vice president would appreciate it. If it's not your speaking privilege, you can't talk, even if it's to like get someone's attention. You say like, yep or yeah, that you can't do that. You can make motions, I suppose, but like you can signal, but you can't talk if it's not your turn or if you haven't been asked a question. So why I called quorum twice is so when you call quorum, someone's name stays on the voting rolls until it's called quorum again. So our Senator Heasley left the room to go take a test, but he was still voting even though he wasn't in the room. So he was abstaining from votes even though he really didn't have a chance to vote yes. And on contentious bills, it could kind of throw off the vote totals. For the same reason, when Senator Mass came in the room, we had to call quorum again so he would get voting rights. It came to my attention that I congratulated Senator Bender last week for something that Senator Han-Young did with him. So I would like to congratulate both of them on doing a great job. Yeah, please look at the court reform. I know the bill. So everything that was in the PowerPoint I sent out is in the bill. There's no changes. So I would actually recommend looking at the PowerPoint, as I know the 3-page bylaw, like the 3-page Senate order is really easy to look at. So please look at the PowerPoint. We also sent out the minutes that Senator Rowling took during that meeting. So if you're really confused, you can look at that and see why we did certain things. And then get your mentor-mentee meetings done for the month. We're getting a little closer to done, hopefully, because there's like 5 days left in this month. So we'll see how many come in the last minute. And if you are a mentor, let me know when you actually complete those. And then for our President Graber, I would appreciate if you didn't tell senators how to vote, even if it's an abstention.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, so,
I just informed you.
yeah, so abstention, we count yeses, so if we get to a majority of yeses in the room, it doesn't actually matter the ratio of yeses to nos, it matters the ratio of yeses to not yeses. So, and then like on finance bills, it's seated senators even, so we just need 2/3 of yes votes, and it does not matter if you were no, abstention, or if you weren't in the room. So I think that's the point our president was trying to make, is that understand that an abstention does the same thing as a no. So just let that kind of influence your decision. We've had bills fail in the past because there was way more yes votes, but enough people abstained that they're actually, like the bill didn't pass. So that's something that can happen and we'll try and work to avoid. But I think pretty good and efficient meeting today. We're gonna get out before 10, so.
Okay, hi everyone. I have to gloat for a second because you all seriously did so good. I'm so proud. During the bills when we didn't agree with each other necessarily, I think we all did a really nice job of staying very civil and still being, informational and not getting personal with anything, which has been an issue in the past. So I want to say thank you so much for that because it was really good. So, update about our kind of pumpkin patch social thing that we're going to be doing. We had a date kind of picked out by the surveys that we had sent out, and then we found out Center Grove on the weekend is $15, which is kind of a lot. So if you know any cheaper pumpkin patches, let us know. We're looking. We want to do that, but we realize that $15 isn't necessarily a great way to spend money sometimes. So just let us know if you know any others. Okay, yeah, I have to do another plug for another organization I'm a part of. So right now the applications are out for the Out of the Darkness Walk. It's a suicide prevention and mental health awareness walk that we do every year. It's an amazing walk where we bring together all the resources we possibly can in the community and on campus, and we walk, and it's kind of all about just being really open about mental health and stuff like that. So it's really cool. If you want more details, let me know, but I'll be sending out links to be on the committee or volunteer and stuff like that. And then lastly, I really wanted to thank Kate, Zach, Ludwig, and Deep for going to the leadership breakout session last week. Like Chase said, it was super cool and really awesome to get to talk to everyone. The conversations are just very casual and kind of a different way to understand each other. So that was super cool. So yeah, and go Cyclones. And with that, I will move to adjourn.
Objections? Seeing none, adjourn.